All right, and we are live as we roll into Film Tangents episode number 67, I believe. This
Yeah,
is.
according to something, dude. According to my personal, because I've been tracking every episode that we've done,
Mm-hmm.
and according to my personal numbers, this is episode 96.
Okay. Okay, you're counting the lost episodes, the lost year of Film
Mhm.
Tangents when we didn't even
But
have
yeah, dude, I've
microphones.
yeah, I've counted everything. This is episode 96 so far.
Dang.
That's what matters, dude, is the real, just us boys hanging out, man.
Yeah, the real number.
Just us hanging out. Dude, we didn't know what the hell we were doing back then. It's so funny to go
No.
back to like season. Dude, I even went back and listened to a little bit of like early season 1 from 2020 the official, Film Tangents, the stuff that people can actually find.
Mhm.
And I was just like, man, I was at the time I remember being like, oh wow, this is good. And like looking back at it, we have grown. I mean, we might not be the
Yeah.
greatest fucking radio personalities out there or anything, but
Yeah.
we've grown a bit. Like I'm listening to it and it's like I sound kind of wishy-washy, and I'm just like, girl,
Yeah.
like I guess what I'm trying to say is like, so we've improved a little bit.
It's like
Yeah,
going
we've
back to
grown.
season 1 of Family Guy, and you're like, "This isn't
Yeah.
Family Guy." It's
Oh.
like the same kind of
Yeah,
feeling.
there's
the
an
bones.
acquired taste. There's an acquired taste to it. It's like that in and of itself is like, oh, this is pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the more refined, polished stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember the early days with rose tinted glasses.
Yeah. No, same here, man. It was fun. And that was like a good year too. Like 2022 was a pretty good. It was a pretty good time. I had finally kind of settled in to being in the workforce and everything.
Dude.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, Jack. The freaking it is really interesting to go back and watch animated shows in their first seasons because like the budget was way lower,
Yep.
so the animation looks all shoddy and everything. What's weird? Like when I was a kid, and I kind of still feel this way, but even as a kid, like when I was like 12, I would like thirst for like season 1 Simpsons or like season 1 South Park, Family Guy, because I like just as a creative and as at the time like an aspiring cartoonist, it was so interesting to like look at those early seasons and be like, oh, these like professionals didn't know what the hell they were doing, and it was like there was a charm to like the shoddy animation, because like
100%.
yeah. Yeah, because cartoons aren't supposed to look perfect. They're kind of supposed to look weird, That's what I
And
like
not even
about it.
not even just like the way they look, but the characters themselves, and like how you like. I went from watching like just casually watching like mid seasons to you go back to the beginning and you're like, the characters are like way more raw and just like
Yeah.
they really have over time zero in on like defining them, but at the beginning it's just like it's kind of cool to see like the original idea for things.
Yeah, that's really true. What do you think that is actually really true, the characterization, because like people have talked about that that actually was a big what do you call it? That's like a big contention with Family Guy, how all the characters kind of devolved in that show. Like I think the biggest example is like Brian Griffin. Like people are like, oh, he just became like the biggest douche ever, like the biggest douchebag. I think that probably the worst de-evolution would be like Quagmire, if we're being honest. But I mean, because he just became a sex offender essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's even true. We're talking about pictures and cartoons, but in how these cartoon characters become caricatures of themselves, right? And it's fascinating how, I guess it's just an inherent element of long-term television, right? Because then if you talk about a show like Seinfeld, or if you talk about a show like, you name it, any show that's gone on for longer than like 4 or 5 seasons, Rick and Morty, the characters just basically, it's like every season of a show that passes, it's like season one, you are the creator and you have this show, and then the show is like hovering over a funnel, and then season two they're in it, and then season three they start liquefying, and then eventually it's like as seasons go on of a show, like you just end up with whatever the essence of the character was.
Yeah.
Like with Quagmire, like ultimately he's just I mean, for lack of a better term, like an offender, like
a
a
rapist,
predator, exactly.
Like
And
a
it's like
100%. It's not even just implied.
Yes,
like they have actual jokes at this point where he is, or scenes where he's literally like roofying it. I mean, it's bad.
Or episodes. I remember that episode where like he's late to the airport, and then Peter keeps crashing into his house, and then all these women come running out. The implication being that he was like kidnapping and like
oh
these people
yeah,
hostages,
yeah. I do remember that.
So it's like but show those are like gags about the character, and then eventually that just becomes the character. So it's fascinating. How again. I couldn't tell you a show that goes longer than like 7 seasons where that doesn't happen. It happens.
It's so true.
Shows.
That is so true, man. It's funny. It doesn't even, and it's not even just with animation. It's like you said. It's with, you can see it with all these shows, and it's not even just sitcoms either. Like, I was at my girlfriend's the other day, and she's been like watching. She's been binge watching Dexter. Not really binge watching it, but watching it over the past few months. And she just finished season 5, and because I came over to her apartment and she's got it on the TV, and she's like, I'm like, oh, where are you in Dexter? She's like, oh, I'm on like season 6, like episode 3 or 4 or something. And I was like, fuck, I was like, I don't want to, taint your experience, but this is about where I stopped liking the show, because it does, they take like, because I think what happens is like back to the Family Guy example, because that's it's easier to, it's a way easier show to pick on. Like, new Family Guy is unwatchable, dude. I tried like I think a year ago to watch like a new episode. It is unfucking watchable. Like if you thought it's so bad, and I know people say that about The Simpsons nowadays too.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know, I'm sure it is. I haven't seen a new episode of The Simpsons probably since I was like 14 years old. And like back then it was like an old ass show. And now Family Guy is like the new Simpsons, because Family Guy's in its like 20 something season. And Simpsons is like in its, I think they're pushing their, They got to be at least on their 35th now, or coming up on their 35th season, because that came out in 1990. But
36.
Like, yeah. Oh, that's crazy, man. So like, yeah. So Family Guy. If you kind of put yourself in the shoes of those writers, as that show goes on and you start running real low on creative juices, that creative tank is like, burning sludge at this point. It's like, it just, those core, like those like that, the character's essence, like Quagmire being a sex offender or Brian being a pretentious douche. It's like, that's just the low-hanging fruit. It's easy, and they can just squeeze 20 minutes, or, not even 20 minutes. They can squeeze a 30-second gag here, a 30-second gag there, and that's it.
Isn't it? No, go ahead. I actually lost my train of thought completely.
It was So what was? Oh, I was just gonna.
We both lost our train of thought.
Jack, help! Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, show's over, everybody. No,
Go home.
Well, I was gonna pivot a little bit. Have you guys? Did you guys ever see the South Park episode where they actually like visit the Family Guy writers' room?
Yes.
Nope.
Yeah, I know. There are a bunch of like what is it like dolphins, right?
Manatees.
Yeah,
So
manatees. Yeah.
so Jack, basically what it is like it's a 2-part episode called Cartoon Wars, and they actually bring the Simpsons in too. But basically, like, I think it's like Kyle, Stan, and Kenny are like fans of Family Guy, and then Cartman like hates Family Guy, and he's talking about like he's like, guys, there's no story. It is just a series of unrelated jokes and cutaways, and like, and so then he like goes on this. Basically, Family Guy announces that they're like gonna air an episode that is. And for the same reasons that, South Park probably is uninterested in repeating this mistake, I'm not going to say what the episode was that they were going to air in the fictional universe of South Park. Hopefully you keep up with this. But suffice to say, it was... In the episode of South Park, Family Guy is going to air an episode making fun of a certain religion. And Cartman is like, uses it, because Cartman's an asshole. So he's going to use it as an excuse to try to shut down Family Guy. He's like, no, this has gone too far. So he goes on like this journey, and he makes it all the way to like Los Angeles to the Family Guy writer's room. And they show him, he like goes there under the guise that he's a fan. And they bring him into the writer's room, and it's just an aquarium full of manatees and idea balls. And so when the manatees push 5 random idea balls into a canister, it becomes an episode or a Family Guy cutaway. Which isn't too far off, because like, I don't know, Family Guy is such a mixed bag. Like, I love Family Guy for nostalgic reasons, and it is like a fun. It's like a comfort show for me. I do like to throw it on, like especially if it's just like I'm trying to wind down. I need, even if it's been like a rough day or I'm feeling bad about something. Like Family Guy is a great, very medicinal. I mean, it to me, Family Guy is like very feel good, because like South Park's hilarious. But we've kind of talked about this before, Edward, where South Park's funny, but it's also, for me, and maybe you agree with this, South Park is not as much of a comfort show because of how like mean and sometimes outright grotesque it is.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Whereas like Family Guy, there's just like a warmth to it, it's kind of like The Simpsons injected with like a dose of South Park humor.
That's exactly how I feel about Rick and Morty. That's also I haven't watched like a single episode of that show in years, and it's because of that, because I just feel like I can't put on that show just to kind of be like, I'm just gonna bitch out,
Yeah.
Like I'm just putting this on so I can just like mindlessly laugh at like some jokes. Rick and Morty doesn't work that way.
No.
I feel like.
No, definitely not.
But Family Guys, like all like Family SpongeBob shows like that are like the epitome of like, you can just throw this shit on,
Yeah.
Like you can just put this show on and even just let your mind drift into a completely different thought, come back to the show 5 minutes later, and just laugh, because you like just happen to come into this new 30-second loop of a joke,
Yeah.
It is 100% just like a comfort show for sure.
What is your like guys' top 3 like comfort shows that you just throw on at any given time?
SpongeBob, dude. I'm gonna go first. I think for me, it has to be Curb Your Enthusiasm, SpongeBob, and maybe Seinfeld. Maybe.
Nice. For me, it's it's got to be Family Guy, Seinfeld. And what would be the third one? I'm trying to think.
You're trying to give a list that's not the same one that I just gave. You're like, how can I get Curb Your Enthusiasm not in here?
No. Because you said what? SpongeBob, Curb, and Seinfeld, right?
Yeah. We have Seinfeld both.
Yeah, no, I legit, like we both have Seinfeld. Curb, honestly, like for some reason, Curb is definitely a comfort show, but I don't find myself putting Curb on that much. I don't know why. I feel like maybe I've just because we used to have Curb on like all the time at our apartment, like on weeknights or whatever. And I feel like every time I see an episode of Curb, there's just this like sense of like, oh, I remember this episode. And not only that, but I remember this episode really well. Like, I feel like I've watched this episode at least twice, you know, because it's not as lengthy as Seinfeld. You know, there's only like of Curb, like 8. How many seasons were there of Curb?
I think it's 11.
11?
It's like either 11 or 12. So it's longer than Seinfeld, because Seinfeld only has 9.
Oh, I stand corrected then. There's more episodes per season in Seinfeld, though, right?
Yes, there's more episodes per season. Yes, 100%. Because Seinfeld has like 20 plus episodes per season, and Curb is just like, what, 10? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, because TV shows used to wild out, man. They used to have like 20-something episodes.
They used to have a shit ton of episodes, dude.
Yeah, even like Walking Dead, dude. Like Walking Dead had like 22 episodes a season. Like the whole like 10 episode format didn't really catch on until like Game of Thrones. No, Game of Thrones is like HBO were the ones doing it, but it didn't catch on with other networks for a while. Like I want to say Better Call Saul is like one of the first shows outside of HBO that I noticed having like a short like 10 episode season, you know, but anyway, okay. So to go back to steer back to Jack's question. So legitimately like, yeah, like Family Guy, Seinfeld. And then oddly enough, I would say 3 would be like Breaking Bad. Cause I know Breaking Bad, like Breaking Bad explores a lot of dark topics, but to me, it's just such a great show. And there's also, though, Breaking Bad isn't like super duper in your face dark. So like when I look at like one of my other favorite shows, like Hannibal, for example, that would be a strange comfort show because every episode is like, you know, dark as dark can possibly be, you know. Yeah. But Breaking Bad is like, it gets dark like a few times a season, but a lot of Breaking Bad is just Walt and Jesse. First of all, the color scheme and everything of Breaking Bad, like the lighting, like it takes place in sunny New Mexico, you know, so it's always like sunshine, you know, there's no overcast or like dreary lighting in Breaking Bad. So already visually, it's kind of like a cheery looking show in a way. And yeah, like a lot of it's just like good drama, you know, a lot of it is just like Walt and Jesse kind of navigating this like entrepreneurial endeavor, this illegal entrepreneurial endeavor. So those would be my 3 comfort shows probably. And bonus Pink Panther. But Jack, I want to hear yours.
Oof, Pink Panther.
Hell yeah.
That is a classic. I don't know. I definitely missed out on the SpongeBob train, like growing up. It was like one of those like, yeah, me and Jake both like, oh, it's gonna make you dumb or whatever. That was definitely something that I didn't watch enough. And it's kind of hard, like once you miss the boat on those kind of shows. Even like same thing with like Dragon Ball. Like I feel like if you missed it, it's kind of hard to go back and like really appreciate it.
Maybe.
Maybe. I watched it anyways later, but top 3 comfort shows. I mean, there's a show White Collar that I've just always loved, where it's kind of like a crime. For something about the crime drama area is just like something that I can really just relax and enjoy. And it's like something is like intellectually stimulating enough to like there's something they have to solve each episode. There's constantly like different problems that are presented. And then kind of like, you know, overarching themes behind it, like long story points that they're trying to go through and, you know, motivations that drive throughout the seasons. So I've always really found like crime drama being a series that was really good. And I liked White Collar because it's just an interesting pairing of like having an FBI agent be paired up with somebody that he put away in jail for white collar crimes. You know, like racketeering, forgery, like all sorts of different stuff. And they, you know, basically he gets out of jail and put on an ankle monitor, and it works like for the FBI to crack cases. Great show, and it definitely one of my comfort shows. To be a little more basic, and I think it's kind of nostalgic and very basic, but The Office will always have a place in my heart.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Dude, that's like, that's the show that I miss the train on completely.
Yeah.
Completely. I've never liked The Office in my life. I've seen maybe like 5, 6 episodes. You know, I've not liked a single episode of The Office. I've had to live with my entire life with people liking that show, memes of that show. I don't know what it is with that show. It just never clicked with me. Like, I used to be on Comedy Central watching stand up, or Family Guy. And, the second that they would go on, I'd be like, next up, The Office. I'd be like, oh man, that's 30 minutes lost. It's 30 minutes that I'm just not getting. I don't know what it is with that show, man, because it's also like really similar to like, Curve and stuff like that. It just never clicked with me. To this day, I think of going back and watching like the UK Office, because maybe the UK one would click with me, but like the American Office, it just never happened.
Yeah, I don't know. That sense of humor just gets me every time, and like I got invested in those characters, and a big part of it was like, I don't know, first year of college, did the random roommate, like had this roommate, like me and him had like basically nothing in common. Like it was really hard to like
tell me about it.
but like one day, like I put on The Office and I was like, all right, like we're gonna watch this together. And it probably took 3 times of me like force feeding watching it with him, and then he kind of got like so into it, and it was like something that we really like kind of had, like one of the first common grounds we had. So that show has like always will have just like a nostalgic feel to it, and just like such a fun time in my life, freshman, sophomore year of college. So that's probably 2, and then 3. Honestly, something cartoony just has to make the top 3, because cartoons are something you can just enjoy like anytime, and just like American Dad for me, like I really liked American Dad.
Yeah, you did like that
love
show.
Those characters. Yeah, I watched the whole thing, and I'll throw that on as a comfort show every now and then. Probably not as often as those other 2, but definitely enough to make the list.
Yeah, there were for me, I guess similar to American Dad, it's not really a comfort show, but one show that I did kind of get into, which I think like at some point, definitely at some point in season 1 of Film Tangents, I mentioned it, was King of the Hill. Because like when I was a kid, it was like that was just the show you would like wait for it to be over.
Dude,
so Family Guy.
Same.
Yeah, you're like, like I'd be at a friend's house, sleeping over at a friend's house on a Friday night. We'd be like on Adult Swim, and it would be like, oh, like King of the Hill's on right now, but like Family Guy's on at 11. So we'd be like, let's just wait for King of the Hill to be over, and we'll like flip the channel to something else, Because like, yeah, as a kid, it's just like there's just not much going on in those episodes. It's very it's much more adult.
It is. Yeah.
But as an adult, like King of the Hill, it's the guy who did Office Space, Mike Judge, and it's brilliant, man. It's
Beavis and Butthead too.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead. Yeah. It's kind of like it's almost like I want to say like King of the Hill is almost like I don't know. It's almost like a redneck Seinfeld or something in a way, like or like a Southern Seinfeld. Not. I guess not redneck. Yeah. He's got like redneck friends or whatever, like Boomhauer.
Not like Trailer Park Boys. Either of y'all ever watch that? I never got into Trailer Park Boys.
No, I never got into it either.
I had like a couple friends in high school who watched it. I didn't really. Yeah, no, I've never seen an episode.
Same.
Yeah.
Shout out my friend Murph. He was into it.
Oh, nice.
I could get on board. Yeah.
Yeah. Comfort shows, dude. That was a solid question right there. I like that one.
Yeah, dude, it really was. I wanna do a quick shout out for a birthday. It's my brother's birthday this week, so I want to shout out my birthday, who's a long time man who's been mentioned a lot on this show.
Oh,
happy birthday!
Happy birthday to Edzilla, man. Yeah. Eddie the man. Yeah, that's awesome. Happy birthday, man, if you're listening.
Happy birthday, Big Junior.
That's awesome. Um, you know what I was thinking, guys? People
What?
these days. People is getting dramatic these days.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? I was gonna say, like, I want to hear like what's getting you up in arms, like usually for you, because I know that you have on our long chapters of Facebook journey episodes. I know that you deleted Facebook. You're like having kind of a social media blackout situation. So I want to know, like, what encounters have you had that have made you feel like, what is up with society?
Yeah, no, so like exactly. So yeah, this isn't going to be another Facebook thing. We've beat that topic to death for a little while, I think.
Yeah.
Unless you guys have things to add on it, but I'm not going to go into too much on about Facebook for a while. But like, yeah, dude, you can't escape it, man. Like, there's this weird sort of tendency I've noticed these days for people to just talk about everything like they went through fucking D-Day, dude. Like it was the beaches of Normandy, you know? I'm like, what the hell is going on? This seed was planted between season 2 of Film Tangents ending and now. And I've been simmering on it between during the break between seasons. And like I can't like the thing that really got me going was, and I think I mentioned this to you. I think I mentioned this to both of you guys, but like for the audience and for you guys to get the ball rolling again, like I read this novel called, and the novel stunk. I did not enjoy this book. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. Like, I did not enjoy it whatsoever. I couldn't finish the novel. And I was reading reviews sort of for like vindication, because whenever I DNF a book, I like to look at the reviews and be like, what was I missing? Like, did people like it? Mm-hmm. And then to see like the other negative reviews, if I'm like vindicated, I don't put reviews. I rate it on Goodreads, log it, and then move on. But that's just me. And a few people mentioned the author's acknowledgments. So I was like, okay, what's going on here? So I like go into the author's acknowledgments, and the author starts talking about how like he had a tough time during the pandemic and everything. And I'm like, all right, like, I get it. Like, It was a weird time for everybody. And then he basically says something to the effect of like, then January of 2021 comes around and I have this new idea for a novel. So I'm all excited and I sit down and I start writing it, and I start knocking out pages. I write the first chapter, and then the insurrection happened. And that was just about wrapped up any writing I had planned to do during January. It was like, I think he said something like, it turns out storming of the U.S. Capitol ruins your plans of any writing for the rest of January. And I'm like,
wow.
Bro,
that happened at the very beginning of January, then.
That's what I was just about to say. I'm like, dude, that happened like, what was it, the 16th? Or the 6th?
The 6th.
The 6th! The 6th! The goddamn 6th!
25 more days just washed.
And I'm like, what? Yeah, 24 or 25 more days. I'm like, what? And again, it's like you weren't even there. It's like, it's one thing if he was like a security guard at the White House, but I don't think so. And if he was, then my bad. But like, I don't think so. I don't think I missed that part. I don't think I missed it. I read the whole acknowledgement. I wasn't just perusing, skimming it.
Well, dude, that's the thing, because it's like, I think there's something to be said about I guess, like, the human condition at this time, and maybe our inability, a lot of people's inabilities of being able to detach themselves from world happenings, to a certain extent, right? Because we're talking about, like what, like 60, 70 years ago, if not even less than that, maybe 60, 40, 30 years ago, you only really knew what was happening or in your city. And those are the things that are immediately impactful to each person, right? Like whatever's happening in your neighborhood, like if your neighbor's house burned down, or if they got robbed, or whatever's happening in your city, like if for some reason it's like, oh, there's wolves loose in your city. Those are things that are immediately relevant to you.
Yeah.
So you need to know this information. Everybody needs to know to a certain extent, and obviously you don't even have to access the news for that, because you have family, you have friends. People will make sure that everybody will know us in some way, shape, or form, what's going on immediately around them. But we're also living in a world, where you also know everything that's happening everywhere else, like we know every single thing that is happening in the town next town, and the town after that, in every single state, in every single country. We even know things are happening in the ocean. We know things are happening in space. So it's like this collective human consciousness that's expanded so drastically, that people now have to come to terms with things that are just happening like everywhere. And I think for a lot of people, and I speak for myself when I say this, have developed like a level of detachment, where like for me, I'm able to these days, I'm able to just kind of see something happening and kind of be able to detach my brain from that reality being something that causes me like anxiety or stress, because it's happening elsewhere, and I know it's kind of a sad thing to say, but it's like, how else do you survive, because you cannot be in this constant state of like bleeding out for everything that's happening everywhere in the world. Otherwise, like that one guy, you don't do anything. Like, you just become a defeatist. Like,
well, I don't know.
The world just feeds you.
I also feel like part of it too is like this day and age, like the amount of like actual true misfortune that people deal with, like from, like a stoic kind of perspective, like a lot of our problems compared to like decades past, centuries past, are so minuscule, when something like insurrection, which may not even directly affect you, takes you down like way more than if you were able to have some more misfortune in your life to invite it in a way to where it's like you can handle it and you can deal with it. If you're so far removed from like life's not always rainbow and sunshine, that it's like these things really have a greater effect on people than probably any generations past.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is like, I don't even if you're like a super, like if you're a news junkie, like always connected to that stuff, right? Because like we're not the arbiters of how you should live your life. Like this is just what I was talking about. Like we talked about it a little bit last week of like disconnecting from the internet, and if you're a doomer, that's the best thing you can do. I believe that, but it's not like I'm stating that's. It's not a prescription. It's just something that I believe that helped. That's helped me in the past with certain things. But like, even if you're a news junkie, like super political person, if you're working on a novel and the insurrection happens, like take a day, but goddamn, like get back on the horse, dude. Like 25 days you need to recover from seeing something something like that on the news. I mean, Jesus.
and that's kind of where I was going to too, in the sense of being like we're all dealing with this shit at the same time. Like everybody's kind of dealing with this stuff at the same time, and like you were saying, it's like even taking that into consideration, right? It's like at least have the if you're going to take on a task and yourself, because then if you're unwilling to if you as a person are unwilling to say like I have to find a way to compartmentalize these things, and develop kind of like a deep understanding of where I stand with things that are happening in the world and the things that I have agency over, right? Because like you can't really do anything about that. There's certain things that you can do things about, like that are happening elsewhere in the world, through like charity donation or through like active like social work. But it's like with stuff like that, there's nothing nobody can do about that. Specifically that situation. You couldn't have done anything about that.
Right.
So it's also a matter of just like, if you're not able to compartmentalize these things, then you do have to, I feel like at some point, like you do have to kind of say to yourself, like, well, I'm going to embark in this journey. This guy probably should have said this to himself like the 1st or the 5th of January. Like, I'm going to embark on this journey, that I have this sensitivity where I'm not able to really detach from these things and they affect me deeply. Then maybe, do a blackout. I'm just going to write for a month. And I'm gonna black everything. I'm just going to turn everything off. I'm gonna get this project out, because then I'd at least have the mental fortitude to be like, this is the kind of person who I am. This is the project that I want to do, and I probably need to set these kind of like barriers around me to be able to accomplish that, but not just defeat yourself for a month.
But it definitely is
cool.
like a weird thing, having so much access to so much information. I mean, Jake,
Yes.
you talked about bringing this topic up on the podcast, but I'm going to just, jump you and take it over. But, like the airline situation today with the plane that collided with the helicopter in 26, I think you said it was, did you say it's 26 or 46
60,
people?
I think it was like 66 people.
Okay.
In the 60s died.
Damn.
In the 60s, people died. Like, that kind of information is like, what do you do with that? Like, genuinely, because
There's
it's
nothing
like,
you can do with that. There's nothing you can do with that.
and there's a lot of instances in like media today where it's like those kind of things are just thrust upon you, and you're just like, I don't really even like know what to do with that information. Like,
All that you can do with that, is be afraid. It's just like, be afraid.
People
like,
really need.
What else do you do?
Yeah. People really need to and this is coming from somebody, I was diagnosed with OCD at 8 years old. I mean, I legitimately, it's kind of a colloquialism, like, oh, I'm OCD about this and that. Like, I have diagnosed OCD, runs in my family, and I could easily use it as a crutch, but it's like, as someone who has dealt with that, people need to put themselves through some exposure therapy, because I don't think, honestly, like, I somewhat agree with you, Edward, that like that guy should have done a blackout, but I think the better thing would be to work out your tragic news muscle a little bit, like, let's strengthen that muscle a little bit right there, because it's like, if you can't deal with that, I mean, what are you gonna? But it's like, and you know what it does though? It cheapens the experience of the people who were actually there too.
100%. Yeah, because you were not that didn't happen to you. But the reason why I'm laughing too is because I'm just imagining this guy in like a Clockwork Orange situation. just being held down.
Horrible news stories.
Yeah. Wait until he gets into the 1940s, dude.
Well, at least we know that now that Donald Trump's been elected, he probably won't be writing another novel anytime soon.
Oh yeah, dude, he's done for at least 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah. Well, as a novelist too, as an aspiring a novelist. God damn it! Hang on.
Damn.
A novelist aspiring to be published.
Yes.
It pissed me off in a way, because I was kind of like, you get to be a writer, Like, I'm like, dude, if you get to be a writer, I get to be a writer. Because I went through, and I'm not trying to be like better than thou, but a little bit. I am claiming to be mentally stronger than this person, because I have, I went through the same pandemic this guy did. We all went through the same pandemic. Experiences varied, but we all went through it. And I've been through OCD episodes. I've been through some shit. And you know what? I wrote through all of them, So, like, toughen up, people. I mean, goddamn. And because, like, here's the people just, I feel like people these days, they make everything sound like the beaches of Normandy, dude. They make everything sound like fucking D-Day. Like, when I told people, like, I recently got this huge ass, like, half, sleeve-ish tattoo on my arm. Part of it goes over my elbow bone. That hurt. And I have told people, like, that was one of the second day, because I did 2 days in a row, back to back. I have told people the second day was one of the most challenging days of my life, right? But it's in the context of I'm a middle-class guy from the suburbs. You know, I haven't been in, like, the military. Right. I haven't been, you know, I wasn't, you know, like, beaten as a kid or exposed to some horrific things. Right. Like, you know, so like, keep it in perspective. Like, stop acting like everything, like, what happened to you is, like, the beaches of Normandy. Right. It's really, again, it really freaking cheapens the people who died on January 6th, first of all, who were there, who had to suffer through that stuff. You know, even some of the politicians there who were, like, in fear for their lives that this mob was going to come in and, you know, God forbid, like, rip them limb from limb. It cheapens the experiences of people who have actually been through the thing. 'Cause I know that you can't say, like, oh, what you went through doesn't mean anything, right? Like, I know everybody's experience is subjective, but can we draw the line at, like, you had to have actually experienced the thing to be traumatized by it? How about that? Can we draw the line there?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's fitting that you say that too. I think that's kind of like the point to take into account the most, right? That it's just like that for a lot of people, those are their lived experiences. And it's fascinating too, because I think a lot of the time, especially when you read something like from like a writer or a successful writer or something along those lines, or like an American successful writer, it's like these kind of things, then you have to kind of take them. There's like an element of that then you also know that just from this fact of where it's from, right? There already is like a level of privilege, right? It's like this suffering through privilege, where it's like, I guess, you know, it's just fascinating, because then you're just thinking about this person who is just kind of crying out about this. They didn't directly live this experience, you know. And not only did they not directly live this experience, it's probably safe to assume that their life in and of itself just really didn't ever even prepare them to have to, or you have to, you know, you look at this thing and you're like, okay, this is a person who's coming from such a position of privilege in their life, where their life didn't even prepare them, you know, not only for just like whatever short-term suffering they may have or they might have had, but not even just to be able to stomach the fact that other people are suffering elsewhere. You know? Especially when you take into account that there's people who have, like you said, served in the military, or actually are people who are in countries like Ukraine, you know, that are actively like at war,
or North Korea,
or at conflict. Exactly. So it's just interesting, because it's just like, you know, everybody's living their own experiences, and there's obviously worth and value in that, you know. Like you said before, there's also the matter of fact that it's like not one thing works for everybody. So it's like, of course, you know, I take those things into account. You know, everything is like so nuanced, and every situation has a level of complexity. But I feel like when people kind of come from situations like that, you know, especially in America, you know, or like if you're like in England, you know, or if you're like in Sweden or Switzerland or some shit like that, it's like somebody saying like this happened, you know, millions, or, you know, not millions, but, you know, 1,000 miles from where I'm at, you know, and it debilitated me to such an extent where I wasn't able to be of use or value or productive for a month. There's such a lack of perspective in that, you know, that it's fuddling, even beyond, you know, me trying to be empathetic for that person in their circumstances. It's just like, that's just kind of silly, you know?
Yeah. Well, and to add to that, guess what? If you're being completely, you know, just debilitated and unproductive for a month, you're not helping those people. The people who are helpful to those who are suffering are the people who are strong, who remain stoic and unaffected. Not completely unaffected, but can still fucking get out of bed in the morning. They're the ones that, you know, go over and help in Ukraine. They're the ones that, you know what I mean? So, like, yeah, it's like Theo Von said. Theo Von made a similar point to me, where, you know, he said people, you know, he was like, they're like taking people out of the oven half baked these days, you know, and like he's right, dude. Like they really are, man. Because like, you know, you see all these I've seen articles before where it's like, here's why Gen Z actually isn't soft, and it's like bullshit. Shut up, you know. It's like
we live
bullshit.
In a society, dude.
Gen Z's soft as fuck, and that's just a fact.
Yeah, it's like you can do mental gymnastics all you want. Like, no, we actually have empathy, and that takes bravery. It's like empathy. It's useful in the sense that you'll actually take action to help those in pain. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like if I see someone suffering on the side of the road, empathy is step 1, action is step 2. And if my empathy is so great that I see someone on the side of the road suffering and then I curl up into a ball and cry for them, guess what? I'm fucking useless, you know?
Right. Right.
So okay, so that was like the first thing. I saw that around like Thanksgiving, like around the time we had recorded that Christmas special. And then like a few weeks later, this is actually kind of movie related, so it's good. That'll serve as the beginning of a bridge into movie territory.
Segue,
yeah. So I saw a few months ago, I was on YouTube. I saw a video essay. I forget what it was called, but it's probably pretty easy to find. It's about Longlegs, and it was about the movie Longlegs from 2024. People who haven't seen it, horror thriller, starring Nicolas Cage and the girl from It Follows, about a serial killer. And basically, the video was really interesting. It was because it hit the nail on the head. The creator hit the nail on the head of why Longlegs freaked me out, because there is a part in Longlegs where essentially the main character is super, super frightened by a photograph she sees that unlocks sort of a repressed childhood memory. And that, I've talked on a previous episode about how that I could really relate to that, you know, because there were pieces of media when I was a kid that freaked me out for reasons I didn't quite understand too at the time, which made it almost kind of like a repressed memory. And so I was like, that's really cool. You know, that video is awesome. Because what essentially he did was he went on to talk about how he related to it so much because he saw a photo from a horror film as a kid that really freaked him out, that like terrified him. And he said this scene in Longlegs sort of like reawakened that memory for him. And it inspired him to track down the movie that the photo's from. And he shows the photo at the end, and it's pretty freaking creepy. It's like a scary like.
Oh, that like directly relates to you.
What'd you say?
I said I can see how that's like I can see that with you because we've talked about that with you in the past. Like I know where you're building up to.
Yeah, so I was like, that's pretty cool, and the photo was creepy. I mean, it's from it was from a J horror film called or not a J horror film. I think it was a Korean horror film called Woman's Wail from the 1980s. If you look up Woman's Wail on Google, and you go to images, you'll probably see the face that he was talking about. But
let me see. Oh yeah. Ooh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's terrible. Okay, I'm going to.
Yeah. There, that's it right there. Do you see that, Jack?
Okay.
All right, hold up. Did you share
It's
it?
just a horrifying. Like I was just
show Jack again.
This
Yeah.
is horrifying. Describe it to the audience. Just this like horrifying picture of this like woman with like blood all over her face. Her eyes are like white.
Yeah.
And there's like a black background. It looks horrendous.
Yeah. So I thought the video was very interesting. So then he made a follow-up video like a week or two later about that photo and how he went about like how he originally stumbled upon it as a kid and how like he eventually rediscovered it because of Longlegs and everything, and he talks about the movie. And there's a point though where he's talking about it. And he's like talking about how him and his friend were searching for scary J-horror faces. And then they found that image. And he said that one just scared the shit out of him, like more than all the other ones. But then he says, like, then he goes on to say that, like, that image just, I started losing sleep over it, which I get, like, that's fine. I mean, as a kid, like, that happened to me sometimes. But then he starts making these claims like, oh, and then I started losing weight, withdrawing, not seeing my friends anymore. I stopped hanging out with my friends because of how much the photo was bothering me. And I'm like, okay. All right. Did you really? Did you really? Is that true? And it just, again, it like added, it just added to that. It kind of compounded on top of the like novel, like author's notes, where I was just like, man, what are we doing? It's like, dude, you didn't get hit by a truck. You fucking saw a scary photo, like,
Yeah.
God damn, man. But yeah, I don't know. That's just another example. Again, it's like, again, Theo Von. People coming out half-baked these days, dude. They're coming out half-baked.
I think that's a great great sentence to kind of put it into words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't want to shit on our own generation too much. Especially in the context of like everything. Especially because this is and I've always said this. You probably remember me saying this before, Jake. You always have to think about the world. Or I always think about the world in the sense of like this, we're like existing in a world that we really didn't make,
Mm-hmm.
like this is not the world that we created. We just kind of came into it. So it's like in a way, our generation or a lot of loud voices in our generation, because it's not really our generation as a whole, but a lot of loud voices in our generation are just obviously, just symptomatic of the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's easy to just say like, these people are half baked, but it's like, no, man, all of you, this is the world that you guys made for us, know. So there's also that, to play a little bit of the devil's advocate for our folks.
No, I mean, I agree with you. Like, I do think people are, it's all kind of like a product of
the times.
Well, yeah, it's like a product of how people were raised and like, just kind of like who you are like on a genetic level as well, in terms of like, just who you are as a person, your natural personality and everything. So it is hard to like say to someone like toughen up, and then because in order for them to toughen up or like, sort of, get fully baked, if we're using Theo Von's terminology, it's like they kind of already have to have like the capacity to do that. Like that's what I think is like a really, like we're kind of drilling deep here, but I really think that is
it's like a nature versus nurture situation there.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it really is like it's tough because a lot of times like people's solutions to or like posed solutions to certain things is for like, well, people should just make other different decisions, and it's like. I don't know. You kind of have to change an environment, I think, to change people's choices, And I know, like, I don't want to get way too deep into like free will and everything, but I really don't think you can really go up to like. I don't think it's very pragmatic, really, to go up to like a 30-year-old, Redditor who just like lives in his mom's basement, the stereotypical Cheeto dust guy, and be like change and like think that he's gonna, you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't really work that way.
It's fascinating.
He's who he is at 30,
Yeah. I'm gonna throw this analogy into this for whatever it's worth.
Fitness.
This past weekend, Jack. No, Jack, for whatever reason, I know this. The Australian Open happened weekend.
Oh, yeah.
A player, Jack, that you know in person, Madison Keys. She won the women's for the Australian Open. I know that you saw her do an exhibition with Sloane Stephens. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she won it. And on the other side, Jannik Sinner defended his title. He won the Australian for the second time. He beat a tennis called Alexander Zverev. And this is where I'm tying this analogy into our conversation. After Zverev lost, there was a lot of talk of like he should have done this, he should have done that. There was a lot of he should have people trying to play coach for him. And then ultimately he went into the press conference and he was like, you know what the thing is, Sinner's just better than me. He's like, he hits the ball better. He returns better. He does everything better. I just serve better. Um, and that you saying that made me think of
Center's
that.
got a
Of
hell
like,
of a
you
serve.
can really only say so much. Yeah, he's a hell of a serve, but you can only say so much. It's like, but I get it's like you can really only say so much to a situation that's just a losing, as it is. You kind of have to admit defeat sometimes.
I have to say, completely off point, but bringing up the Australian Open, like when I saw Madison Keys in live in Charlotte, like watching her play, I was like, everybody's just an exhibition match like that into actually winning the Australian Open. I was like, that makes sense. Like I just saw her play and she looked fantastic. So I was like, that was awesome.
Yeah. Oh,
I
dude,
think
when she won, I was like, I have to look to Jack saw her.
yeah. And I think kind of like coming back to kind of what Jake was saying was like people like 30-year-old Reddit person like isn't going to change. Like I think the thing is like that there's always like this outside opinion that like I can point to an example where somebody's come out of like nothing or like a tough environment or there's always people that do it. But the problem at its very like essence is it's not scalable. Those are like very small instances of it happening, but on like a large level it's just not possible.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. 100%.
Well, yeah, because I've been thinking about this lately, and again, this is getting a little deep, but we'll get into film stuff, guys. I promise. But we're just riffing right now. But yeah, I kind of promise. No, so I was talking to Jack about this recently, but I really something dawned on me over the past year. I don't know if it was like from reading like Stoic philosophy. It probably was. But to me, it's kind of a weird thing to be angry. Like, so not even really talking about this is kind of segueing into a new topic, I guess, about like people, personalities, and sort of like the free will to choose and to change. But it's like I honestly have gotten to the point where I think it's actually super, super goofy to be angry at somebody for how they are, for the way they are, and like how you know them to be, To me, it's like to the point, it's almost like being mad at like a dog for barking or being angry at like a giraffe for not eating like the birds in the treetops instead of the leaves. It's like, it's like, dude, this, like, I really do think that they're, and if you read like the science of consciousness and free will and like how the brain is, the brain is just kind of this, meat machine. It's wetware, and it's programmed, and you can change that programming. But think about it. In order to change that programming, you already have to have some programming elsewhere within that same wetware that's capable of change. So and it's tough because then people might ask, well, how can we hold people accountable for crimes then if that they don't have like free will or they don't have the capacity to change? And it's like, I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know.
It's fascinating because I've wrestled for a long while. I think you and I have had kind of conversations along that subject matter too. I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100% that it's just a very complex topic. In the sense, in the angle of how it's just like a functionality, you just have to. Like you can't help but have to. But I agree with you 100% that it's just like there's no degree at these things. Especially, and again, I guess for people like us, I guess we just do have that kind of programming where we have the capability of change or the forethought to have, a certain level of perception to be able to just see a train coming, and then just kind of see how that clashes, and in a way you kind of, in a way, those things are kind of necessary for I feel like the level of stoicism in which you look at things that way, because
Yeah.
again, like you said, not everybody's capable of looking at things that way. Because for a lot of people, they never see the train coming and they never hear it until it's there, and then a lot of people just also not only not have that perception, but they have the self-reflection to be able to submit to change,
Mm-hmm.
So it's fascinating, man. Um, Life is fascinating. I often also think about that author. I think it's like Wolfgang, that said, like, I thought he was like, I didn't know anybody, nobody knew me. Because think about that.
Edward,
Also,
your audio's cutting out again. Just
you know,
do the thing again.
Da-dum, da-dum.
Yeah, there we go.
but can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Edward's back, everybody. Woo!
But what I was doing is one of the things that I also think of then, just to kind of recap where I left off, is the author. I think it was Wolfgang. I don't know if it was him, but he on his deathbed, he was just it was this guy who was thought to have this kind of great knowledge and great ability to kind of recreate the world in his writing, and then he was just like, I never really knew anybody, and I never really felt like anybody also knew me completely, so that's just. There's a lot of elements of, I feel like, the human condition that we have to wrestle with that are just like inherent. These are things that are just inherent to the way that we live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not film tangents. This is philosophy tangents.
Yeah. Fuck it. Well, like, yeah, and I think that's kind of the strength of like Stoic philosophy is just the idea of like, hey, look, like of course, like if you don't want certain people in your life, that's fine. You should absolutely cut them out. But the people who you've decided are going to be in your life, who have traits that you dislike, or maybe they have to be in your life and you don't like them at all, it's like
There's no helping that.
Yeah, it's like acceptance is really the only the only cure.
Yeah.
Because I've been in
Yeah.
situations, in like, social circles or just circles of all kinds where it's like, people being like, well, person X, like, I mean, if they just did this and that, then it would be fine and they would be fine. And it's like, they're not gonna. We've known them for how long? They're not gonna do it. So it's like, just accept, work around it, and that's how it is. Because that's the thing. Everybody is just kind of like an NPC in a way. We're all just running our program, and.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some people's programs allow them to navigate the world better than other programs do. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. It's the same as like, you're playing GTA 5, the police officer NPCs programs allow them to navigate your maniac ass running around Los Santos better than the fucking, pedestrians.
Yeah.
Better than those NPCs,
Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah. Well, side note, but I think to segue into like media, and we don't have to go into this show completely, but just on a side note, I think Better Call Saul explores this question probably better than most pieces of media, maybe any piece of media that I've ever seen. This question of like, can people really change? Because I think Better Call Saul's answer was like, kinda, but not really, And unfortunately, to go more into that, we'd be getting into spoiler territory, and I'm not going to. But yeah, I think that show did a very, very fantastic job of exploring that question in a nuanced way. So if you like this conversation, go watch Better Call Saul. Edward, you had some movie news for us, man.
Yeah. Everybody who's been waiting for the movie news sec of Film Tangents. Here it is. We're just kind of making a return because I think we abandoned movie news for a little while.
Yeah, we did. It's helpful to fill up time for sure.
Yeah, but I'm returning movie news to Film Tangents. So I'm going to do kind of like an NPR style, like quick fire. If you guys want to talk about any of these,
Yeah.
just jump right in. Let me see. The third act of the Michael Jackson biopic has been scrapped and will have to be reshot due to legal issues. The third act focused on 1993 investigation into Jordan Chandler's claim that Michael Jackson abused him, but the Michael Jackson estate forgot that they signed a deal with the Chandler family saying that they would not mention that in any way whatsoever. And because the film's third act was about that, they had to scrap it. And now they have to reshoot it.
Wow.
I didn't even know there was a Michael Jackson biopic.
Yeah, it's happening.
I haven't seen the first two acts.
Yeah. But moving on, there is
Do you know
a
who's
Jurassic
real quick?
World movie.
Real quick, do you know who's
Oh, go ahead.
making that Michael Jackson biopic? Is there anyone notable like in the cast or crew?
Dude, I have no idea. I didn't bother like looking up like the actual thing.
too.
I don't
Okay.
think so. Like, I don't think there's any big names. But I could be wrong. If you know in the comments, let us know. So this is moving on.
Jafar
We have-
Jackson as Michael Jackson.
What is
Yeah.
his son? It's
Yeah.
Jafar.
Cat Graham is Diana Ross.
I think he is related. He looks like Michael Jackson.
Really?
He's got to be a
Really?
relative.
Related to-
Is he a relative?
Yeah, I don't know. Here, let me see.
Oh yeah, I think he's like a yeah. He is. He's like a nephew. It looks
Son of
like.
Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah, and that's so he's Michael
Nephew
Jackson's
of Michael.
nephew. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good choice because he looks like him. I could tell immediately when I pulled him up here.
Yeah, it's like when Ice Cube's son played him in the Straight Outta Compton movie.
Oh my god. Yeah, you couldn't get more perfect
I
than
just
that.
launched his career too.
Oh yeah, dude. Dude, Ice Cube's son looks
let me see.
exactly like him.
He looks just like him.
There's a photo I'm looking at right here of them side by side, and I like for a second I couldn't even tell who was
Dude, he
who,
looks exactly like him.
which is
he
a
looks
compliment
exactly
to
like-
Ice Cube because he's aged very well.
Wait,
Yeah.
what? I just pulled that up. That's uncanny.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll keep going with movie news. There's a World Reap movie that is directed by Gareth Edwards, the same guy that directed the Godzilla movie from 2014, with Scarlett Johansson in the lead role. Let me see. And also we have Charlie XCX will star in a movie called The Moment, based on her own script, and it's an A24 movie. For the Charlie XCX fans out there. Let's see.
Good for
Roger
her.
Eggers says Roger Eggers says he has no interest in directing a film set in the modern era. He said, and I quote, "The idea of having to photograph a car makes me ill, and the idea of photographing a cell phone is just death." So,
Wow.
Robert Eggers is
That makes
officially
sense. He's-
set to direct a sequel to Labyrinth.
Oh shit. Okay, I haven't seen Labyrinth actually. With that, it's been on my watch list for a while, but it makes sense because I mean Robert Eggers it's all period pieces. That's like 4 now that of just period pieces that he's made. That's
Yeah.
interesting that
Yeah,
he
and
feels that way.
also- Yeah, no, and he also has like I think he's also set to direct like a werewolf movie called Werewolf with a U. So he's keeping on going.
Oh, dude, that'll be fire, man! A period werewolf piece, like, oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
like, oh, dude, I'm guessing that
Yeah.
would probably be like a Victorian setting. That'd be fire, man.
Probably. Yeah,
'Cause
dude, I'm down for him to continue down the road that he is right now.
Yeah, I've actually never seen because I know they just came out with that Lee Wanell Wolfman movie. It seems like that one got like mixed reviews though, which is kind of too bad. I'm kind of interested because I'm kind of interested to go back and I never watched that 2010 Wolfman movie. Did either of you guys see that?
No,
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah, with like Benicio del Toro or whatever. Might be interesting. But yeah, Robert Eggers Wolfman film. Shit. I
No,
mean,
I never
just have
watched that.
dude, just have Robert Eggers do all the gothic monsters, dude. Witch, vampire, now a werewolf. Just have him go down the list, man. I need a Robert Eggers film for every gothic subgenre of horror.
Yeah, for that. Makes sense that director Villeneuve wasn't nominated for Best Director at the Oscars, so he kind of put his opinion out there, and that made news. Barbarian Zach Kegler or Kreger is officially set to direct a new Resident Evil movie. George Nolfi, and I put this here just because I wanted to hear what your reaction would be to this, Jake. George Nolfi, the writer of Ocean's 11 and The Bourne Ultimatum, is the new writer for the Star Wars movie focused on Rey, The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh.
After The Rise of Skywalker.
So that's still happening? I thought that got scrapped.
Yes. No, it's happening. And that's the writer, the guy who wrote Ocean's 12 and The Bourne Ultimatum, that's who's writing it.
Who is that for? I mean, who do they think they're...
Dude, I don't know.
How out of touch is Disney at this point? Who do they think they're even making that for?
Dude, I have no idea. I have no idea.
If it's not anything between the first 6 movies, I don't want it at all. Even that, like, I'm tapped. I think I'm tapped. Like, Star Wars has been bled dry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
and then we have like Scary Movie 6 coming out in June. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I just... Yeah, like, you know, because we talk about, you know, people always on the internet say, like, touch grass, but honestly, I think, like, for whoever signed off on this movie, I would say the opposite. I'd be like, I would say get the hell on the internet and see that, like, the internet hates Rey, dude. Like, is there even a more hated protagonist? Can we even think of a more hated protagonist in the modern era than Rey? Maybe, like, I don't know, Captain Marvel or something. Like, dude.
Maybe.
I mean, you know, and it's like, it's for good reason. You know, it's just a terribly bland, terribly written character. I mean,
yeah, I don't know, but they're still trying to make it happen. They're still trying to make it happen. I don't know, like, what their belief is in the character, but they're still putting their ships on that character.
To play devil's advocate, I guess you could say, to sort of put myself in their shoes, maybe you could say, like, well, the slate's kind of clean if you're doing a new movie about Rey. I guess you could make it good, you know. You could flesh out her character and do the character right. So, you know, I guess that's an argument.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I think in the making of the movie, because they double down, I think in making this movie, they're just saying, like, let's give this one last shot. I think that if this movie fails again, we will definitely see Rey's character in other movies, but she will most likely not be a protagonist. Like, it will be like, oh, she's just there, you know? And maybe that way they will garner some kind of, like, positive, like, oh, maybe if we make it a side character and she does cool things, maybe people will kind of embrace the character. We'll see.
Well, that'll be like the nostalgia, the like retrospective thing for
exactly.
Then in like
Hayden
the thing. Yeah, like in the 2040s, it'll be like, oh, remember Rey, you know, and it's like, remember when we all shit on it, you know, and like that's how it is now with like, oh, remember Hayden Christensen, and it's like, yeah, and everyone shit on that character. Like, but now it's like we're nostalgic. It's like the South Park member berries or whatever, where it's like we're like nostalgic for things that weren't even good, you know. It's just like,
yeah, exactly. But I feel like if they do that with Rey, they'll do it like within the next like 3 or 4 years, you know. Like this movie will fail, and then like the next movie after that will be like, you guys, but she's here again, you know.
Yeah,
we'll see. But in other news, Daredevil, Born Again showrunner Dario Scardapane says the show has a lot less navel gazing than before. The earlier show, at its best, was fantastic. At its worst, it was 2 characters in a room talking about what a hero is. I felt that had been done. I'm not taking swipes. I just didn't want to hear characters browsing about their lot in life.
Boo. Dude,
Suffice it to say, it's been a controversial statement online.
yeah. I mean, dude, the original Daredevil show is fantastic.
Yeah.
No, that's already. I haven't been particularly excited about that show. I don't think they're gonna. I highly skeptical that they're gonna be able to recapture the magic of the original Daredevil or make something like better or build upon it in any meaningful way. Like I do think it's gonna be watered down. And yeah, this sort of this is starting to prove it because it's like, dude, those were the important themes and everything. I mean, I know, yeah, like you could say maybe I don't remember too well. You could say that like some of the scenes were a bit like on the nose and everything, but you know, like don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because that was like a very important theme. I mean, Daredevil's very comparable to Batman in that way, where it's like this continuous conflict between like, you know, being a hero versus being, you know, kind of, I guess being moral versus being pragmatic, or even being moral versus being hateful against the criminals, you know. But, yep.
You're talking about 2015 Daredevil?
Yeah.
That show?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I want to add some salt to that, because then his following comments after that, he said, he compared the show to The Penguin. We're even grounded, even less stylized, even more rooted in the here and now. I love The Penguin, but we're a little faster, meaner, and cleaner in our storytelling. Whatever the hell that means.
I would say you got some big shoes to fill because Penguin was awesome.
Yeah, it's like the director of the show. It's like it's almost like he's trying to create as much negative like feeling in the fans as possible. But it's like, why? Why are you doing this? Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see if he can back up arcing that he's doing. But Quentin Tarantino says he won't be directing his final movie for a while. He is writing a stage play for his next project, and if the stage play is a hit, he's going to do an adaptation. He said if it's a fucking smash hit. Parasite, the movie by Bong Joon-ho, will be re-releasing in IMAX theaters in February 7th to celebrate the 5th year anniversary of the movie. Quentin Tarantino said that movies have not been good since 2019, that was the last year of movies because everything now releases on streaming like a week or two after the fact.
Wasn't that it? That was when his last movie came out.
Exactly, dude. And the top comment was, of course, Tarantino believes that the last great year of movies was the year that his last movie came out.
God damn. What are these people in Hollywood on, man? I don't know, dude.
Jesus Christ.
They're all just like sniffing their own farts, man. Like it's
yeah, dude, I don't fucking know. But the director of the movie of the week, the director of The Substance, Coralie Farjeet, she says in talks to direct Black Widow, but she turned it down to make The Substance. Ratu has become one of the top 30 highest grossing remakes of all time in the US. It's actually made decent money despite coming out on the 25th. Benny Safdie of the Safdie brothers has been cast in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which also has Tom Holland, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, John Bernthal, Charlize Theron, Lupita Nyong'o, and Robert Pattinson in the cast. So that cast is stacked.
That's huge.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson reprised their True Detective roles for a new ad to pay for more film and TV productions to shoot in Texas. That was shot by the series creator Nick Pizzolatto, and in the ad, it also featured Dennis Quaid for whatever reason. He was like in the backseat of it. I found that interesting because I was like, of course they would reunite for like an ad or like a thing, you know.
Yeah, it's like what is it? Bryan Cranston, Aaron Paul, and then Raymond Cruz did for the Breaking Bad Super Bowl ad last year. That was or maybe a couple of years ago. That was solid. Yeah, for a second
Jake
there.
Gyllenhaal will officially star. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, for a second there, I thought you were gonna say that that they were gonna reprise their roles like in another season of True Detective. I was like, no, don't ruin that. That was a great. That was the only good season of True Detective. Don't ruin them.
Yeah, I have just 4 more pieces of movie news, and then we're done with this segment. Jake Gyllenhaal will officially star in a supernatural romantic thriller directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and it's gonna be co-written by Shyamalan and the novelist Nicholas Sparks, known for The Notebook and those movies.
Ugh.
Insidious 6 has been delayed by a year to August 21st, 2026.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, Jack, did you see the last Insidious, the most recent one?
The 5th one? No, I stopped at 4.
Yeah, the 5th one was pretty bad. It was like, yeah, it was like it was disappointing too because it was kind of cool. They brought back the characters from the first 2, and they brought back the Red Demon, who's like a modern horror, like a modern icon of horror. And it sucked. Like the Red Demon guy, Darth Maul or whatever, was in it for like 30 seconds, and then man, yeah, the script stunk. It wasn't scary at all. Littered with cheap jump scares and nonsensical plot and stupid humor. Again, like they just, even like horror movies nowadays have like Marvel MCU humor in them now. Like Insidious 5 had legit like Marvel humor in it, which I'm just like, I don't know. And I have a point to make about this a little later if I get to it. But like, I feel like we're not making grown-up movies anymore, man. Like, it's like unless we should
make Grown Ups 3, dude.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Why aren't we making more grown-ups with Adam Sandler?
Movies, dude. Yeah.
What happened to that series? No, but no, I just feel like we're not making, like, unless it's like a serious drama nowadays, it's like we're like afraid to make anything that takes itself seriously anymore.
Yeah, they're all movies for man children, for man baby movies.
Yeah.
But to wrap up the movie news, Aronofsky's crime thriller Stealing will be releasing in theaters on August 29th. It's about a baseball player plunged into the criminal world of the 90s NYC. And it stars Austin Butler, Zoe Kravitz, and Bad Bunny, of all people. The first look for the new Guillermo del Toro movie came out. It stars Oscar Isaac, and it's going to be a Frankenstein movie by Guillermo del Toro. And that's finally, the last piece of movie news. Yeah, dude, I'm just looking forward to that already. And then the last piece of news for this week, Happy Gilmore 2 will be released in Netflix later with Mr. Adam Sandler starring.
Wow.
That's what you had me thinking of when you brought up Grown Ups. I literally looked up to see what the release date was.
It was a setup. It was a setup. Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like I almost heard about, I might have heard about Happy Gilmore 2, but I forgot about that. That's awesome. Yeah. That might be fun.
We'll see if it's needed. I'm a little skeptical, but I mean, because the first one was just...
We'll see.
But we'll see.
It's something I welcome, I mean, more Adam Sandler comedies, it's like, I know a lot of them are really bad, but if you're at least going like with OG style Adam Sandler, I'm more open to it. Like he did that Hubie Halloween one a few years back, and that was like a throwback to like the early days of Happy Madison Productions. Like that felt like a classic, Adam Sandler movie. And like it was pretty fun. Yeah. I think I honestly though, I think I only watched half of it, but the half I saw was funny. Again, it's similar with Family Guy, and this isn't like some, like profound statement to make, but it is stuff that you just throw on to veg out and make you feel good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna go into our weekly recaps now. Who wants to start off between you guys?
I can I can start us off. I only have two things. Um, I watched over the week a movie called Didi. That's Didi. I think by a director Sean Wang. It came out last year, 2024, and it's a coming of age movie. Very much in the same vein as movies like Boyhood or movies like mid 90s. It just touches a lot of those same points. It's like a young man coming of age, girls. This one is actually very similar to mid 90s because the main character also becomes friends with like these older skater boys, and then he gets into skating and stuff like that. Um, just it's like all the same movies. They're all the same movies from different perspectives. Like in this perspective is from like an Asian American boy, so there's like a lot of worth in that. This movie actually is like very heartfelt, and it has this almost like the same themes as Boyhood. Like this ending is kind of the same. Um, I gave it a seven. I gave Boyhood a seven. I gave Mid 90s a seven. And honestly, out of all of these movies, Boyhood might be the best one, and I should probably give it an eight. But this one was pretty good. I would recommend it if you're kind of in the mood for those kind of films. Again, very earnest, heartfelt, coming of age film. Um, yeah, yeah, not much more else to add to that. It takes place in the 2000s, like 2008. So a lot we might connect more to that than mid 90s, which was about kids in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
or than Boyhood, which was from the perspective of Linklater, who didn't really grow up during that time. This movie really captures that, like really, really captures that. But
That's
yeah, good
awesome.
movie.
I
And
liked that
then
mid
on the
'90s
other
movie
hand,
too. The mid '90s movie was
yeah,
solid. But yeah, it sounds
yeah,
like
dude, if you liked mid 90s, you'll like this. You'll like this if you liked it.
that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like yeah, you said 2008. I mean, that was like
Hmm.
yeah. When I think of childhood, I think of like '08, '09, 2010. You know what I mean? That was like
Hmm.
um
And
that's
this is this
cool.
movie.
Yeah, I definitely got to check that out.
Yeah. And then I listened to Little Wayne in my. For those, for those who don't know, I've been going through albums alphabetically. All the albums in my library, thousands of albums. I've been doing this for like 3, 4 years, and I'm in the L's, and I'm also in the LI's. So I'm in Lil Wayne, and I re-listened to his albums because I've already listened to all of them. So I re-listened to the Carter One, the Carter Two, the Carter Three, and the Carter Four. The last time that I listened to these albums, I came out of them basically saying to Jake, the Carter 4 is like a 4 out of 10, and the Carter 2 is the best Wayne album, and the Carter 3 is like a 6 out of 10. That was my thought then. The Carter 1 is a throwaway album. There's really not much to revisit there. He wasn't full formed like Lil Wayne. There's a couple of songs there that are like cool, but that's it. Um,
I love Carter 1.
and yeah, but I don't go back to that album. But the Carter 2 is great. There's like a lot of great
Mm.
albums there in that album. Receipt, Hustler Music, a bunch of classic songs are in there. If you love rap music, if you love Lil Wayne, and if you love the sound of like that late 90s, early 2000s hip hop, he embodies a lot of what was great of that sound that time, especially Southern hip hop, him being from New Orleans. Great album. But my opinion has changed. I do now believe that the Carter 3 is the best Lil Wayne album. I think it's the best, without a doubt, the best Lil Wayne album. Um, Mr. Carter's in that album, Lollipop's in that album, Mrs. Officer's in that album, How to Hate a B Word with T-Pain's in that album. He
No,
goes in
that's
a
on
great
4.
run. Oh no, that's on 4. That's right. In the Carter 3, he goes in a great run. There's a lot of great songs in that album. I love that album. I can't recommend it enough. It's great. And then the Carter 4, I changed my opinion. I also think the Carter 4 is actually a good album. It was cool re-listening to it because
Finally.
again, How to Hate with T Pain, it's great.
Yes.
Like there's just so many songs in there. Nightmares of the Bottom that I've loved Nightmares of the Bottom for like 10 years plus. Like since I first listened to Nightmares of the Bottom, when this album came out, I've loved it. That's a song that I really dig. Um, he's great. Lil Wayne's great. And I really like the Carter 5 too. I'm not really listening to it for this list. I'm moving on. But yeah, all the Carter's albums are great. The first one is the worst one. but it's also it's worth listening to. There's just not a lot of memorable stuff in there. But Carter 2, 3, and 4, they're all great. Carter 3 is the highlight, but they all have a lot of songs in there that are just worth going back to. Even President Carter in Carter 4, I think it's cool.
Let me Can I chime in on the Carter albums real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. But that's it for me for recaps.
Okay, yeah. So like the Carter one, I'll give my favorite tracks from each album. So maybe and maybe you could do that too if you want. But like, Carter 1, Go DJ, obviously that's a classic. And then I really like On My Own. I think that's a great song. That one, just the beat. I love the beat. It really just it really captures the feeling of just driving your car like through a metropolis at night, like a metropolitan area at night. I don't know what it is about that beat. Yeah, go ahead.
For me, I agree with you on My Own, and I don't like Go DJ, but I do love the one that follows it. This is the Carter with Manny Fresh. This is the Carter. Yeah, so yeah.
For Carter 2, I have to say I feel like I did like Money on My Mind, but I haven't listened to that one in a while. I don't remember if I'm thinking of that the song, the right song, but
money on my mind, money on my mind.
I really love Lock and Load. Grown Man featuring Currency is probably my favorite off of this album.
Yes, that's my favorite off of this album too.
Yeah, that's a great, again, that beat, fantastic. A lot of these are just the beat really makes like rap songs, and a lot of the time at least. Yeah, and then Shooter I like, and then what was the other one that Lock and Load I really love. I love Lock and Load.
Yeah, for me it is Grown Man and Receipt, Hustler Music, and let me see, and then I sent this to you when I was listening to it on I'm a D-Boy with Birdman.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's got some
Carter 3.
Yeah, he's got some great songs with Birdman. I like that Like Father Like Son album that they did. Leather So Soft is a good one off of that album. I like that one a lot. And then obviously Stuntin' Like My Daddy is a classic. Chief Keef actually has a great remix of that song called Stuntin' Like My Mama, and he does a pretty good job over it. Over that beat. But and then Carter 3, my favorites off of this one are easy. Lollipop, that's a classic. But as far as because Lollipop's the big hit off of this album. Actually, the Lollipop remix, Kanye goes really freaking hard on
Kanye. Yeah, that's a pretty good remake.
Yeah, Kanye kills that beat, dude. But besides Lollipop, my favorites off of this one are Mrs. Officer and then Prostitute. Prostitute is I have that song on loop to this day. What about you, man?
For me, Lollipop, Mrs. Officer, and Mr. Carter with Jay-Z.
Yeah, and I think Carter 3, like, if you look at, like, songs like Lollipop, Got Money, and Prostitute, I think it's pretty obvious where mumble rap comes from.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
No mention of A Milli.
Millie's all right.
Millie's all right. Millie's all right. It just gets old. Millie's like good for like
it does
a minute,
get old.
And then
it does get old.
It's too long. It gets old.
Yeah,
what about Carter 4?
Millie was like fun when I first heard it, and then I got tired of it. But yeah,
I don't play it, but yeah, I used to.
Yeah. Carter 4 for me, it's got to be. Yeah, Nightmares of the Bottom's a classic. She Will, How to Hate, Interlude. I'm a big Tech 9 fan, so Interlude is great.
Interlude's good, and Under 2000's in there too.
I know you're down on this one, but I think How to Love is a good song.
I hate How to Love. How to Love is terrible.
How to Hate is a great one though, with T-Pain. Like
it is a great one. How to Hate is great. Yeah.
Great, chord progression and on the beat and everything. Like that beat just really builds upon itself like over the course of the
great
song.
Chorus. I'm done I'm done effing with bitches. Great,
Yeah.
great chorus.
Oh yeah, I'm done. I'm through fucking with these bitches. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's so
great
good.
song, great song.
What about you, man?
But yeah, Jack, Jack, what do you got? No, the same ones as you. The same
Okay.
ones as you. Gotta hate, and also to throw one in there, Blunt Blowing. I really like Blunt Blowing.
Oh yeah. Of course.
Blunt Blown's good. I
Yeah.
like that one.
Blunt
I
Blowing's good.
haven't, honestly, to be completely honest, I haven't brushed up in some Wayne in like a good long time. So
Gotta
that might
brush up with
be,
some Wayne, dude.
yeah, might be some inspo. I needed to take a deep dive back into some Lil Wayne
For
because
when,
he's definitely one of the goats of our rap time period. 100%.
oh yeah, yeah. Wayne, I really love revisiting over the over the past year. I've been re-listening to a lot of his like mixtape songs, particularly ones where he was making heavy use of auto tune. Like he's got some good ones like that are actually available to stream. He has one called "Whoever You Like," which is a remix of the Ti song "Whatever You Like." That he does a lot of cool, fun like
Yeah,
auto
I've heard
tune
that one.
warbling. 30 Minutes to Orleans is a good one. And then like that prostitute song on Carter 3, I really like that one. That's like a Young Thug verse before Young Thug was even around.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead, Jack. Give the audience something to chew on.
Oh, as far as my recap.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll get into it. I definitely feel like I snapped my fingers from last week to this week, and I feel like I definitely didn't have as much to update on.
But dude, I just had about a movie too. I had one movie.
Yeah, I didn't even watch a movie. Well, actually, I watched one movie between last week and this week, but I mean, that was it. So I'll start with that then. Since it came to Netflix and it'd been a while, I brushed up and rewatched Interstellar.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch that for so long. For so
Yeah,
long I've
and
meaning to
and you
rewatch that
won't
movie.
regret it. I mean, that movie's just, it's fantastic. Like, I'll stick to
Oh, dude,
that.
don't tell me.
Yeah, love that movie, and just rewatching it. Just, I don't know. Growing up, like especially being like into, like I'm an engineer. Like space was always something that I was just like so fascinated by. And then kind of like through college, like learning more about like physics and the kind of the way that those things really work. Like it even kind of sparked more into that interest. So rewatching this movie, it's just a masterpiece and just one of the best depictions in film of space ever. I mean, probably the best. I would go out on a limb and say it. So I really enjoyed that, and a big thing that really, I'm not sure if it just wasn't top of mind the last time I'd watch it, but really stood out to me was just the soundtrack, like Hans Zimmer soundtrack. I mean, it was great. It really fit the vibe of that movie well, and just kind of the themes of just going space exploration aspect, but also kind of like the emotional aspect of trying to reconnect with the daughter and losing kind of that connection and trying to kind of hold on to it as much as possible. Great movie, and definitely worth a rewatch. TV shows, been watching just it's just kind of like a comfort show as well. Just been rewatching some Suits. Always just loved that show. I don't know if either of you have ever really seen it.
Mm-mm.
No, but I mean it's just
I've
kind of
watched
same.
it. I've watched it with you.
Yeah, same kind of fix, kind of adjacent to like the crime drama stuff that I like. Is just like the lawyer drama stuff, and main character just has. If you don't really know the premise of the show, the main character has a photographic memory, and anything he understands, he never forgets. And he kind of becomes a lawyer for a firm that only hires from Harvard, but he never went. And so there's like the lawyer aspect going on throughout, the different cases that they're going, and it's like a really high stakes. A lot of them are high stakes cases, but also trying to kind of keep the fact that he's not actually like a registered lawyer under wraps, and there's constant brushes with trying to figure out like people at that in his class, like, oh, like I don't remember who you are, like stuff like that constantly pops up. So great show. I love it, and probably will always be on a top 10 list for me. So just kind of been throwing it on. Um, music wise, it's been very similar vibes. Like, and I kind of mentioned this before, and I need to probably do some better jobs of like finding some more regular levels of music. But a lot of my music is just workout music, and the rage music vibes have just stayed prevalent through this week. Listening to Ken Carson, listening to Lil Uzi, listening to Playboi Carti. I especially kind of listened to some of the stuff off of that All Red album that I really wrote off and just didn't like at all when I first listened to it. I didn't like. I don't know why, and I'm having a hard time seeing like how did I miss this album?
It was really ahead of its time because that's the sound now, dude. Like, because rage music was around before that album. Like Playboi Carti made music before then. Lil Uzi was around. Like Trippie Redd was around. But like that's the rage sound that we really know, and you know a rage beat when you hear it in 2025. Yeah. That started with Whole Lotta Red, you know, that like distorted hyper pop sound. Like he started that. That album was really ahead of its time. My sister will be really happy to hear us talk about this. She's a big Playboi Carti fan.
Yeah, her and me both, and that's why I'm like really having a hard time seeing how I just didn't like it because I loved what's that first album with Woke Up Like This and Yamin and
I think it was self-titled, right? Yeah.
Loved it. Die Lit, I mean that was probably my favorite Playboi Carti album as opposed to the first one. Like I love that album. I played the shit out of it. Like me and my friends in college, like I mean when that came out it was just like just running it round the clock. Loved that album. And then I just don't I'm still coming to grips with the fact that I was just missing out. So it's been nice to rediscover it and enjoy it. Some of the Uzi that's come up on that playlist, like I don't know, I'm really kind of on the down decline with him.
Yeah, his new album kind of stinks, man. I listened to that thing. I think it came out like a month ago. I was not feeling that, man.
No,
it sounded like he recorded that in his sleep or something. I don't know.
I haven't listened to it.
He's very stale. Yeah. He's not progressing musically. Like, yeah, he peaked at Love Is Rage 2, I think. Or maybe 100%. Maybe Eternal a Take, but I don't know. I find myself revisiting more of Love Is Rage 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eternal Take was like slightly declined, but not very. I don't think it was better than Love Is Rage 2. But I don't know. It's not doing it for me anymore. But there's still some songs. There'll always be some Uzi songs that still just pass the vibe check. And then also kind of adjacent to just like the heavy hitting, just, you know, pumping you up type beats, got into some hair bands type stuff for the working out. It's like a totally different vibe. You know, from the rap, listening to Van Halen, listening to Def Leppard, listening to Motley Crue, the Scorpions, Guns N' Roses here and there, Bon Jovi, like just really been revisiting some of that, and just it's a great pump and iron type vibe for me. So I've been enjoying that as well. But other than that, that's really all I kind of had for recap. So it's on to you, Jake.
Nice, man. Well, this week I watched one other movie besides the movie of the week, which was Heretic. Came out last year, directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, starring Hugh Grant and Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East. Basically, the latter two basically play two young Mormon missionaries who are going around spreading the good word, and basically they arrive at Mr. Reed's house, who requested some information on the Mormon Church, and it turns out Mr. Reed is basically if you took Jigsaw and then made him it's like Jigsaw if he was like a Reddit atheist essentially. So his whole thing, like the games, the little like escape room type games that he does are very faith based, and he goes off on a lot of like religious tangents about why he thinks religion is stupid and why he thinks it's fake, and he makes some a lot of a lot of arguments that I've heard. Some good, some bad, some mid. So there were some, as far as like positives for Heretic. I mean, I think it's worth checking out. Like if you're a fan of the horror genre, or if you just like a good kind of cat and mouse thriller, it's pretty good. You're not. I don't think you're gonna come out of it like just wowed or anything. But you've got a really solid build up. Like I thought the first half was very strong, especially the first act. You got a very solid, very suspenseful build up. Just all the hallmarks of like just the characters slowly kind of realizing something's wrong here, and you as the audience kind of being like, okay, like get out of there, but it's too late for them to get out of there. The usual, the usual routine, but it's a reliable routine, and it's done pretty effectively here. I thought Hugh Grant as the villain, I'm sort of mixed on him. On one hand, I thought he gave a solid performance, and I really liked his delivery on a lot of his lines, particularly when he was sort of lecturing the characters on why he thinks religion is fake. But I also don't think he was really that scary. And it wasn't only because I don't think it was really his fault. I think it was more the writer and director's faults. Because you had moments in there where he's not a physically commanding presence, and he also doesn't have weapons. And then there's moments where he's just kind of in a room with the two girls, and it's like, he's got this whole contraption where the house is locked and everything, but it's also kind of like, I was kind of watching it like, couldn't they just punch him in the face? Like, I don't know. I just wasn't really, I was like, why are you guys letting him hold you hostage? He's like he's probably, I don't know how tall he is. He's probably like, he's average height, average build, not very scary. He didn't have a gun. He didn't even have a knife at most of the movie. So I thought it would have worked better if he was like, more like Jigsaw, where he's sort of like talking to them from a distance, or, you know what I mean? Like Jigsaw is usually talking to people via intercom, because he's not a physically, Jigsaw is not physically intimidating. His thing is stealth, his thing is his mind is his weapon, So I was a bit mixed on the villain. Another positive for me, actually, before I forget. One thing I thought was really cool about Heretic was some of the arguments he was making as for atheism and against religion. It was interesting because, like, some of them, and I'm not a religious person, and I actually love listening. Like, one of my guilty pleasures is listening to atheist versus apologist debates. Like, I love that stuff. That stuff is super interesting to me. Just talking about like skepticism, the nature of evidence, the nature of belief, epistemological questions, epistemology, how we know things, and what can be reasonable. What can we reasonably believe? So I love that stuff. So I'm very familiar with most, if not all, of the arguments that he makes in the movie. And what I thought was interesting was he makes some arguments that are really solid. And he makes one argument that's an argument that I've heard before, but in a way that's really unique. He compares religions to board games, and says like, you know, Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, which and then Islam is an offshoot of Christianity, and he compares each one to board games and how board games are offshoots of each other, right? And I thought that was interesting. But then he also makes arguments that atheists sometimes make that are wrong, factually wrong. For instance, the whole idea that like Horus, the Egyptian god, is similar to Jesus. Like, there are some similarities, but an argument that atheists often make is that Horus was crucified just like Jesus. No, he wasn't. Horus wasn't crucified. That's bullshit. That's not true. You could Google that pretty quickly. Not true. So I thought that was really interesting. The movie was very balanced in that sense. Unfortunately, this movie falls flat, particularly toward the midpoint. Again, it just stretched believability in terms of, you know, how scary is this guy really? Like, how, you know, he just wasn't intimidating enough to me. And then, yeah, it just felt rushed, I think, in the second half. So I don't think, just kind of summarize, like, I don't think that, I don't know if this movie is going to do much for seasoned horror viewers, people who love the genre. It might be more impressive to casual horror / thriller viewers. So your mileage may vary with this movie. That's really all I can say. 6 out of 10. And then real quick, let me see. That's pretty much it for that's it for movies. Yeah, I think that's it for me. That's good. I have some other stuff.
That being said,
yeah, I had some other stuff I could have talked about, but I think I'll save it for next time.
Well, that being said, sir, you want to go ahead? It's your movie this week.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so movie of the week was The Substance from 2024, directed by Coralie Fargeet. That's the second time one of us has tried to pronounce her name on the podcast. It's a 2024 body horror film. It's up for several Oscars, including Best Picture, right? Am I right on that, Edward?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I'll turn it over to you guys. What did you guys think of this movie?
I'll jump on it. This one has me very conflicted in a couple ways, and I think I'm going to be a little bit more harsh on it than maybe a couple of the other ones. But I'll kind of start off with the things that I think it did well. I mean, obviously, I think that the message kind of the movie got across to me very easily. Like, it was very obvious that the main message was, you know, kind of the societal pressure that, you know, society puts on women to be attractive, and to how, you know, much that they think that's gonna, you know, change the way that they interact with the world. And obviously, kind of through this main character seeing that past her prime, that, you know, she's no longer able to, or at least feels like she's no longer able to enjoy the perks of having been the it girl of her time, and that's really a driving force in the unraveling of herself. You know, when proposed with this substance to give her a chance to relive the prime time of her life, and maybe even, you know, be a better version than she ever was. I really thought that probably up until kind of the fighting with herself part, that I really enjoyed the movie. I thought that it looked good. I mean, I thought especially that one kind of shot that was right up in the producer's face as he's kind of at the urinal in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it was about it, but it was like it was kind of did a great job of just depicting like kind of the grotesque nature of Hollywood and just kind of like he's just like kind of like right in your face, this like nasty guy that's just like kind of a piece of shit.
Dude,
This is cocaine sniffing
I wrote-
producer.
I I wrote a note watching this movie where I just wrote gross Dennis Quaid.
Yeah.
But I loved like some of those type of shots throughout the movie. Like they did make a point to zoom in on that from a cinematography perspective. At some points, I felt like it was a little bit overdone and kind of took away from the overall integrity. But I thought it was a highlight for sure. I really liked how it kind of as we progressed through it, you kind of, you know, get to see the progression of, being unable to even go back to her own body, and kind of how we see the mental toll it takes on her. And this kind of might be where we have some conflicting opinions, but to me, it was really just like, abundantly clear that as we get further into the movie, that like the less that she even feels like her normal self, even has like a right to exist. And then you start to see that fragment itself in the way that, instead of her kind of owning that feeling to really kind of putting it off and almost segmenting herself into being two separate people, when in all actuality, I kind of retain the idea that it is one person. But there's this internal struggle is just so strong and polarizing that, it's easier for these people to segment themselves apart from each other.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, because I felt like, especially when you see that one kind of character that had, met her at the doctor's office and gets her, in the loop and gets her kind of access to this substance. Like when you see him, in that cafe, his old self just being like, these weeks are terrible when you got to be yourself. Like, I don't even feel like I should exist compared to the other guy. Like, I mean, I feel like that was a really good snapshot into like kind of giving you some more perspective on kind of what she's feeling as the movie progresses, and that feeling escalates as she really more when she's the other kind of younger, attractive version feels like the other part of herself just, the value is just tanking throughout the movie. One thing, once we kind of get to the climax and, get to the point where she tries to, once she gets to the point where, she has gone too far and has shriveled up into this, essentially a monster, kind of Gollum looking, state. That's kind of what it really reminded me of. Tries to go through the termination and can't really go through with it. I mean, I thought that was great. And then kind of this kind of fight scene with herself. I really kind of like that, and eventually, killing herself. I thought that's where the movie should have ended, though. Personally, I thought that gave me everything I needed to know, and from there on, for me, it was downhill and not really. I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was essential or adding any value to the film whatsoever.
Yeah,
it was more to just put her on a stage to make a statement that I already felt was said.
Yeah, I already
100%.
from the beginning
100%.
I knew that like this was leading to some kind of like, first episode of Black Mirror / like Videodrome / like network moment where she's gonna be on TV. I just could feel it. And I also feel like I kind of agree with you there, Jack. Like they could have ended it there, and I think the temptation for them to just like up the antics. And by antics, I mean like body horror and gore was like too tempting. I think they just really wanted to like keep going with that, which like on one hand, I can see because I felt myself wanting more of that. But on the other hand, I'm also like, it just went downhill after that. So, I mean, I don't know. But yeah, Edward, give us your thoughts, man. Because I feel like, go ahead.
was gonna say it's I agree 100% with what you guys have said. I'm gonna break it. I'm gonna kind of break things down a little bit, in the sense of we've seen a movie by this director before. We saw the movie The Revenge, I think,
Oh,
2017.
that was the
Jake and
same
I just we
director?
saw the movie. Yeah, that girl, that French movie with the girl that kind of gets revenge from those guys.
I can totally see that, man. That was a good movie. I
Yeah.
liked that one.
Yeah, yeah, and this is, French movie by the same director, and it's interesting. First and foremost, a lot of references in this movie, right? A lot of Kubrick references in this movie to The Shining, a lot of references to A Clockwork Orange, and a lot of references to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Specifically, like when she first injects herself with the substance, that was a very clear 2001 reference. But also when at the end when she kind of goes up in front of all of those people and it's like the big reveal, they play the same music that they do in 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Mm-hmm.
so she has a lot of kind of like Kubrickian a lot of The Fly references and the body horror and the removing of the nails and a lot of Videodrome references, so a lot of Cronenberg stuff. So there's a lot of movie mash in this film. Very kind of saturated, hypercolor, very kind of French European look to the film in terms of its presentation. Very saturated colors. The colors really pop in this film. And also, I guess, very European in the sense that the movie is also very graphic in terms of not just the grotesque, but also the hypersexual of the movie and what we see from the characters. Um, Great performances for I think they both did great. Like
Yeah.
Margaret Qualley, I think, and Demi Moore, I think they both did great. Dennis Quaid was also really great in this movie. Um, and like Jack said, it is ultimately a movie that carries its themes and its message. Like it just wears it right out on its sleeve. Like this is what this movie's about. You kind of get it like right away. But the movie, to its credit and to its, I guess not to its credit and to its detriment, right? The movie has, it just kind of beats you over the head with the message because you get the message. Like, it starts and you see this woman and she's on screen, and obviously, like, all of these male characters are pigs, and they objectify these women. So the movie is obviously it's a very feminist movie. And the director said that she made the movie obviously with these kind of feminist themes in mind, and the movie is kind of trying to, in a way that I can't inherently fault the movie, right? Because the movie just kind of, I feel like the movie just wants to get this message out, of kind of like society and patriarchy and feminism, and the dangers, right? And the damage that social media or celebrity culture, television, all of these things that operate under, a patriarchal society, kind of the harm that it does to women, And it almost feels like the ending of the film in the theater, it's almost like a release from a woman's perspective. Like from this director's perspective, it's almost like this is the release of all of this, centuries of patriarchy and of objectification, So it's like things in stride. And I wrote, as I was watching the movie, I wrote, let me see, progression of a new, also meaner and more hyper explicit self, and the movie's kind of take on consumerism, the constant consumerism and emphasizing this kind of commercial and superficial culture and how, it just kind of rottens away like the core inside of the person. And then I asked myself, if the movie's asking and saying these things about capitalism and patriarchy, right? And I was just kind of thinking, okay, so what's the answer? I said, ultimately, it ends on it being a cycle. That rupture of oppression and capitalism is essentially washed over and forgotten. So that's kind of what the movie's trying to say at the end, right? That it's like, even when everything kind of breaks apart, right? You have this character that again is just kind of being pushed because of the society to make these decisions, basically to destroy themselves. Obviously an obvious take on like Ozempic and like plastic surgery and stuff like that, and we see all these female celebrities and male celebrities, because there's a male character that does the same thing as her, and I think that's just kind of, you know, understanding or kind of attention to the fact that men go through these things too, because everybody under this society is affected, equally, even if not necessarily similarly. But I guess the ending of the movie just kind of, you guys could feel free to disagree with me, but I just felt like the ending of it was, despite the fact that this society destroys us with this bearing, capitalism and patriarchy, right? That ultimately, because the society itself continues to exist, there's no ending that cycle unless we just kind of go about it in a different way. That's just kind of, the movie just kind of felt like a release to me. Again, like almost like a release of just years of oppression, obviously for this female filmmaker. A lot of great things to say about this movie. Great editing, interesting sound, I mean, the editing was great. I thought the movie was well paced. Like Jack said, it kind of felt a lot of the time, it felt like the movie it felt like you could have taken like it's out of this film, because a lot of the points in this movie were so obvious and so restated again and again and again and again that you kind of feel like, let's just take this to its conclusion, and it could have concluded the exact same way that it did, and I think that's kind of the right way for the movie to have ended. But I feel like a lot of stuff should have been shaved from the middle of the movie, with the characters doing their independent shenanigans and the binge eating. Like, I feel like you could have cut a lot of that. I think this movie has like 20 minutes of waste that I think are to its detriment. But that's it. That's my overall take. Good performances, good presentation, a lot of cool references, very bold directing, very bold message with this movie. Lackluster writing and lackluster, diluting of the message just because it was said too much. But that's my overall thoughts on the film.
Yeah, so for me, starting off with the positives for this movie, so I'm actually I agree with most of what you guys have said. I'm going to divert a little bit, deviate from you guys a little bit and offer a counter opposing view, I guess, on one aspect. But let me start by saying that I had a lot of issues with this movie. I don't think this movie was, I don't think this movie's like deserving really of all the hype. Like, it did not meet my expectations. I thought this was going to be a lot better, especially for a Best Picture nominee. I don't think it deserves Best Picture nomination, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't at all. But starting off with my positives for the movie, I actually thought I didn't feel I actually did not feel too beat over the head by the message. Not saying that it wasn't present. Of course, there was sort of that main or that strong theme of, misogyny and sort of like old, like, let's just say old cocaine sniffing dudes, objectifying women and deciding what beauty is, right? Like, like kind of similar to Barbie. Like, this was like Cronenberg's Barbie, essentially, like David Cronenberg's Barbie. But the only reason I didn't feel too beat over the head was I felt like this was a really thematically dense film. I picked up on...
Yeah, for sure.
I picked up on at least, like, I feel like almost a dozen different themes in this movie, but I'll just to kind of rattle off a few. I mean, there was the, fear of aging, generational jealousy. There was sort of like, I even picked up on themes of like celebrity privilege in this movie. There's a fascinating moment in this movie that I really don't think was done by accident at all. But Demi Moore is sitting by herself in her lavish apartment.
Yeah, and there's like the lady cleaning behind. Yeah,
and in the background there's the maid who, let's just say it, is not very attractive at all. Not a very conventionally attractive woman in the least. Who's you can infer is, this middle-aged woman who is stuck cleaning the homes of rich people. meanwhile, beautiful middle-aged Demi Moore is sitting, kind of like crying a river over her own life. And it gets into that whole theme of like, it's almost kind of what we were talking about before with the author of the Kaiju Preservation Society, where it's like, you're suffering in your glass tower, your marble pyramid, the tip top of your pyramid, you're up there weeping over your life. It's kind of pathetic, and I'm not saying like celebrities aren't humans and they don't have real world issues, but the irony was not lost on me, and I think that was done on purpose. And I think it was very interesting that Demi Moore's character didn't even look or acknowledge her maid's existence in that scene. I thought that was really interesting. There are tons and tons of other themes. I know I'm gonna like be kicking myself in the ass after this episode, like, oh, I forgot to mention that theme and this theme. There's others. I should have written them down. But there were just tons and tons of other themes that I picked up on where it felt very Kubrickian in the sense of like, man, this could be about 10 different things. Like people will talk about The Shining and they'll say, this movie is all about the Native American Holocaust, or actually this movie is about child abuse. It's like, because it's so thematically dense,
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't give it to this movie to say that it could have been about a lot of things, because I think ultimately it ends up being like, I think the movie ends up ultimately, the main message ends up being kind of the one that most people kind of get to, like I agree with you that it has a lot of things to say about a lot of different things, but unlike The Shining, where there's obviously that ongoing debate all the time, I don't think that's going to be an element of this movie, like as it ages per se.
I think if the other elements of this movie were better, I think it could be like if this movie made history. But I think this movie is going to be lost to time. I don't think this movie is going to age that well. That's just a prediction, and part of that is biased. Like I didn't like it, but I don't really see this movie aging well. I mean, what horror movie has, in the past 20 years, like you could, or 10 years, you can count them on one hand. But no, but I mean, I think like the message that you guys were talking about, I don't know, for me personally, the whole like old cocaine sniffing producer dudes being misogynistic and objectifying women, that theme actually for me took a back seat to the fear of aging. That was like my main thing, the whole movie. That was what I really felt like the movie was about. Right. So I didn't...
For me, it's just to kind of isolate that, or to divorce the old guys. Because it felt, and I don't know if you agree with this, Jack, kind of agree more with Jake, but it ultimately felt like I was able to divorce those two things. It almost felt like fear of aging because of the old guys, right? Because it also her, because Dennis Quaid fired, and they needed a hot one, So I think the movie in that way is trying to say that these two things are kind of married together, right? Yeah. It's like, so that's just kind of my interjection. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that more than Jake's point a little bit, but I mean, really for me, I think for me, kind of what I got out of it was, and maybe this wasn't the intent, but more like she was missing the privilege of being young and beautiful and sought after, and like the way that people treated her when she was, more than the actual way that she looked. And that maybe not aging was the culprit, but the societal stigma of kind of being past your prime more than just like the actual like physical value of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's hard to divorce those things. I think like our collective, that's what I'm saying, our collective, but even in real life, like not even just in the movie, like our collective fear of aging. It's like, is it really about the aches and pains that we're gonna have, or is it more about like how others will view us, and if other people will still think we're pretty, like it's hard to divorce those two things.
That's true.
And that's the thing, because I agree with you 100%, and I agree with all the points that you've made. I just wanted to add that caveat that I think that those two things are just at least that I saw it in that way of that element and the element of the movie just kind of being married together. Just saying that I agree with you, but I also wanted to add that little bit of kind of caveat to it.
Yeah, it's a fair point too, because that is the catalyst for the movie, is her getting fired. So you've definitely made a very good and pretty much inarguable point there. So to kind of
Such a funny sentence.
no, so to kind of wrap up my thoughts on the movie. Yeah, like, and I will say, like, the first half of this movie, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I wanted to see what would happen. It was predictable. I kind of knew where it was going, but I was just, it was like I'm watching the train wreck. I know where this is going, and I could relate to her. It was like, yeah, man. I mean, I would get greedy too, like wanting to be in the young body more than the old body, and I was fascinated, and I was never bored in that probably the first 2/3 of this movie. Like, I was never bored. Like a lot of the body horror stuff in the first half, really solid, like gross enough, but also kind of, subtle enough as well. They weren't overdoing it. Definitely can't say the same for the latter half. Things that, let me see. I really need to start writing stuff down. I'm trying to think of like mixed elements that I had on the movie, things that I was sort of like half and half on. Now,
anything with the presentation?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I was mixed on that. Like, thank you for helping me out there.
Yeah.
So I thought it was. I'm glad you mentioned Clockwork Orange, because I immediately, like the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is like Clockwork Orange. Like, it had the same feel, like the world, the set design and the setting. Because I remember watching Clockwork Orange and being like, this is almost like like a Dr. Seuss type, like live action Dr. Seuss movie or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of Kubrick in this movie. A lot of Kubrick.
Yeah.
And I saw people, that's just kind of what I picked up on, and I saw people mention like Lynch Mulholland Drive, and I haven't seen that, so I don't know. But then I also picked up on a lot of American Beauty in it too.
Oh, that's true.
Other references to that movie.
Yep, that's definitely true. Now, kind of moving into the negatives, like I said, I don't think this movie deserves Best Picture. There were a lot of problems that I had with this movie, and most of them came about in the second half. Most of them I started to realize had always been issues from the beginning. It was only in the second half that I kind of realized it, and some of them were unique to the second half of the movie. So it really hit me when she's about to go on a date with that guy, right? And then she never goes on that date. I was really disappointed. I was like, I want to see this date. How's this going to go? And it never happened.
It never came back around.
Yeah.
That was a swing and a miss for me, because like I just felt like that was a great opportunity for a very interesting sequence there.
I agree 100%. I was like, when that's building up, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see how this goes, and they found out.
Yeah, and so for me, it ultimately brought to light a very noticeable issue for me with this movie, because I was trying to think. I was thinking of like Cronenberg's The Fly, right? And I was like, why is The Fly so much damn better than this movie? I was like, they're both body horror movies, and they deal with similar themes, fears of aging and disease, and it hit me that the biggest difference is The Fly, he has a relationship in that movie. This movie, the main character has no meaningful relationships whatsoever, and no character in this movie has relationships with anybody. There's no friends in this movie. There's no lovers in this movie. There's no moms, dads, children, grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles. There's nobody has any relation to each other in this movie. So it just feels so disconnected.
Yeah, and then the sad thing too is that the one time that these two characters, the two versions of herself, share a scene, just them fighting and one kills the other. Which that was very reminiscent of the movie Revenge. You know, the Revenge with them just chasing each other around the house. But yeah, no, you are completely right, Jake.
Yeah, and then I'm glad you brought up that scene. That scene should have been great. And Jack, I hear what you're saying with your arguments, and you bring up a great point. But during my viewing of this movie, I just didn't feel the same way that you did, in the sense of them being one. Because the movie tries to tell you, remember, you're both one. And I was like, bullshit. They're talking about each other in the third person. It's like they're two entities. So that completely cheapens and pretty much ruins that crazy moment where they both wake up and realize they're looking at each other. Because it's like, these are two different consciousnesses. You've you know, like, it would have been way better if this was one consciousness, one agency, one person trying to grappling with the conflicted between, you know, the two selves. Conflicted between.
You know what the funny? Yeah, you know what the funny thing is that the funny thing is that they could have had that. They could have had that scene. That scene could have seen the movie, and I think making would have fixed that. Because then you could have just approached that scene, you know, in such a way where it's almost like an implication that the consciousness is just swapping between the two characters, like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, you know, like in a weird, like, being Joe Malkovich kind of thing, you know, like I there's an aspect of filmmaking and POV presentation that could have been like, you know, that could have basically not destroyed that element of the movie that then the movie was kind of harping on at the end when it was like, oh, you know, now this one's dying again, you know, that thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? I want to say this too. You mentioned being John Malkovich. I felt like her having to crouch down to get into that building was a being John Malkovich reference.
Oh, dude, 100%.
That's like
100%.
That's the first thing I thought of. I was like, what the fuck? That's being John Malkovich. It was cool too, because it felt like it, you know, a similar universe to being John Malkovich, kind of this absurdist universe. I love being John Malkovich, though. I did not love this movie. And then let me wrap it up to talk about some more superficial issues that I had in the final act. First of all, the fight scene between them in the apartment was it just felt stupid to me. Like, it just felt goofy and stupid. The way it was filmed and choreographed, I just felt like I was watching the live action Cat in the Hat movie. Like, I was like, what the hell is happening here? And then the Cronenberg type creature that she turns into, it's just like, it just felt so uncreative. Like, it just was like, I'm just looking at a Cronenberg monster. They could have made that creature way more interesting. It just was a lame looking creature. It looked like the things in Rick and Morty, Edward, the Cronenbergs.
Yes.
You know, it's just like
1000%. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like this. You're just doing a Cronenberg. That's what it is. You know, it was lame. You know,
and I felt like the fight between the two halves was not executed correctly, and I didn't really say that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it was executed well, but I think that was like what needed to happen, and if that was carried out in a better way, I think that should have been the end.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say too when I referenced being Joe Malkovich. That I do agree with you, Jack. That I feel like the director wanted that scene so much, and I think it was in a way like an essential element of the film to happen. But I think the thinking in question could have been utilized in such a way to kind of carry that across in a better way, you know. And that's kind of obviously that's the failure picture.
And I feel the same way with the between two consciousnesses. Like, I really do feel like it was one consciousness, but I feel like the way it was conveyed didn't really highlight that. Like, I know that you guys don't probably feel the same way, but I really felt like it was like, you know, the new and young version of her when she's in that body is disgusted with the old other version of herself, and then when she's back in the other body, it's like, I'm disgusted with this young, you know, lustful, youthful person that doesn't give a shit about this other part of me and just like kind of uses and abuses me. That's what I got. But I don't feel like the execution, like kind of Jake was touching on, really like highlighted that connection between the two of those things as much as it could have been.
Well, yeah, I think they contradict themselves with that, because that's what I think that's the route that they should have gone, and that's what I thought was happening most of the movie. But I feel like they contradicted themselves in the scenes where they're, the respective characters are calling to complain, and they're saying she's using too much time, she's getting greedy, and it's like, well, you're talking about a separate entity, like you're talking about an entity in the third person who's making decisions that you don't like. Like, you're not talking about yourself. Right. I'm sorry, but if we're talking about plain English here, like, it's just the film was contradicting what you're, like what the idea that this was the same person. But yeah, Jack, I was on that page. I was on the same page until that happened, and it just cheapened the moment it's, where they become two, quote unquote.
Yeah, and it's hard even to cut the director some slack, I would say, when you take into account what kind of movie this is. Because it's not like this movie is, this movie is not an Oscar bait movie, for lack of a better term. This movie is not a to shed a little bit on a complete note. In that this doesn't feel like the kind of movie that should telegraph or like placate to the audience. Because you could, in defense, you could say she's doing the audience to make it clear to the audience that she's referring to the other half of herself or whatever. But then it's like, well, why would you do this in a movie that, to begin with, is so abrasive? Like, this movie is clearly not, at the very present, not making any concessions to anybody. So it's like, why would the director make those concessions narratively?
Yeah.
So it's like, even in trying to defend the director, it kind of falls flat, because again, this is kind of such a, for lack of a better term, like kind of like an art house, just like, this is just what this movie is. I made the movie and you take it, that it feels like it should have been more nuanced in its writing, and it just wasn't. Like, the writing is such a huge flaw in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like, yeah, and you brought up a good point there. Like, there is so much spoon feeding to the audience in this movie. Like, when she's about to make a decision and like you hear previous dialogue being said, it's like, I don't need that. I already know that. I've already heard the dialogue once. You don't need to repeat it to me. Yeah. I know what her conflict is. You don't need to play Dennis Quaid's voice in over the film to like make me understand. I get it. There was I find it so much. There was so much.
Yeah, no, there was a lot. There was a lot of telegraphing in this movie, and I find, like I said, I find it so strange that a movie like this one, again, like such like an explicit, abrasive movie with, again, just like very explicit content that most people are not going to jive with. So you wouldn't expect this to be the kind of movie that's making concessions for its audience to be clear, But like you said, like, we have so many flashbacks. Even when they revealed that old guy was the young guy, they revealed it to us like in 5 different ways. The same birthmark, the flashback to him. He dropped the card and he talked to her, being like, "I'm the guy," So it's like, how many ways are you going to reveal the same information to the audience? So again, it just, in terms of,
that's so true.
Directing decisions, in terms of the directing decisions, the presentation, in terms of the information and the writing, this movie just falls in its face like so hard. I still do have a lot of things that I appreciate of the movie, but those things are a little bit in comparison, kind of not coming across well.
Yeah, and just and to wrap up, my negatives, like, I think the Cronenberg monster was really stupid and uncreative, and also just the climax was just a total assault on the senses, and it was annoying at that point. Like, oh, it's a Carrie reference, oh my god, like it just got annoying. The filmmaking style got really irritating. Like, I'm not really a fan of that filmmaking style. I liked the way she was more style. Yeah, like Delicatessen, that movie. I think it has a similar style. Just this in-your-face, like, abrasive style. I'm not really a fan of it. And I don't know. Part of it too is on me. Like, there were definitely some false expectations. Like, I went in I really was. I thought this movie was just going to be kind of like a more of like a serious like Cronenberg type movie. Honestly, like I thought it was going to have more of like The Flies tone, and it just wasn't. And I don't know. Like I get that there's going to be movies of all sorts of varying tones. But and I guess this leads me into a good point that I've been wanting to make since we talked about Nosferatu. But just to kind of wrap it up here, like I'm yearning for more grown up movies. Like honestly, like and more when I say grown up movies, I mean movies that like just take themselves a bit more seriously. I don't know. Like I went into this. I really thought that it was going to be a David Cronenberg-esque like horror drama. And what I got was this like assault on the senses movie with like outlandish humor and like lots of jarring close-ups and edits and crazy jokes and over-the-top dialogue. And I don't know, man. Like whenever I watch a Robert Eggers film, like I felt this way with The Northman, and I felt this way with Nosferatu. I feel like Robert Eggers is a filmmaker who, and I want more movies like this, where he makes grown-up movies, you know? And it's like movies that, the only way I know how to really describe it, it's like movies that when you were a kid, you imagined that your parents were watching, you know? Like when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies, you know? So it was like I would imagine what my parents might be watching. It's like, oh, they're watching adult, like grown-up films, you know? They're watching, you know, grown-up films for grown-up, mature people, you know? And I really felt that way, like with Nosferatu. Despite it being a gothic film about a vampire, it was like, it took itself seriously and it wasn't afraid to, you know? And I would like to see more movies like that. I'm worn out on the goofballery in movies these days, you know? Cause like you watch a lot of like R-rated movies these days still feel like kids movies, you know? Like you go to see Deadpool.
For sure.
You go to see like a Deadpool movie and it's like
a kids movie.
Yeah. It's a kids movie
so,
in adult clothing. Like it
right.
It's supposedly it's R-rated. It's supposedly for adults, but it feels like a kids movie.
Right.
Even like the John Wick movies. I like the John Wick movies, but they're kind of goofy, you know. And it's like where are the adult movies these days, you know? And this one, it was adult in it. It was mature in its themes, but just the presentation just felt childish to me.
Yeah, like the only thing about this movie that was adult, like you said, was the themes, and then just how graphic it was. That's it.
Yeah, it just felt very like college film student like fuckery, you know? And it's like, why can't we have like where's The Fly? You know, like I want a body horror movie like that, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting that this was featured with Nosferatu because obviously they're both nominated for Oscars, you know, but Nosferatu is not a Best Picture nominee. They're both nominated for Oscars, you know, and they're both horror movies. Very fascinating double feature that we did here. But with this being a double feature, I don't know if you remember what I rated Nosferatu, because I gave Nosferatu a 6, and I am giving this movie a 6. There you go.
That's insane to me. I was gonna mention too, dude. I really I rewatched Nosferatu actually this past weekend. My girlfriend wanted to see it, so we went to see it in theaters. And you're out of your mind, dude. Like Nosferatu was great, man. I don't know what you're talking about. And I don't know how you give Nosferatu the same rating as this movie. Wild.
Dude, that was my subjective experience of Nosferatu, man. And my subjective experience with this movie also, you know, despite all of the negatives that we've said, and as you've heard me, I have a lot of negatives in this movie. I enjoyed this movie more than I did not. I liked watching more than not liked watching this movie. I actually enjoyed it. You know, the whole time I watched this movie, I wasn't bored. You know, I was engaged with this film. And like I said, I do have a lot of appreciation for a lot of the themes and a lot of the director had to say. And I have a lot of appreciation for a lot of the artistic choices in this film. So because of that, and because it feels like despite its flaws, this movie comes from a genuine place, and I've said that to you about how I rate movies. This movie couldn't have been anything lower than a 5 for me. And because I enjoyed watching it and because I would see myself rewatching this, I'm just giving it a 6. And then with Nosferatu, you know how I feel about Eggers, where it's like I've seen every Eggers film. You know, I loved The Northman and I loved The Lighthouse, which I probably underrated. The Lighthouse, I love that movie. I think it's his best film. Nosferatu just didn't do it for me. That's what I said last week. It's like the Nosferatu, the presentation of Nosferatu, like in the later half of the film, just didn't do it for me. It bored me. You ain't
got the answer, Sway.
That was kind of Nosferatu, dude.
Nah, I'm messing with you,
ultimately,
man. I get it.
I know.
Nah,
what are you boys rating this movie?
Yeah, I'm between like a 5 and a 6. Yeah. Because like my bone to pick with you is Nosferatu's low rating. I get it. I mean, it's everybody's opinion, but
it might go up. This is the thing. This movie, I doubt that this movie would go up in a rating for me in a rewatch. Nosferatu might. Like Nosferatu might genuinely go up in a rating for me because I don't think it's lower than what I rated it. But just that, and I had a really pleasant movie theater experience with Nosferatu too. It's almost empty. It was just not it. At least in my first watching of it.
Yeah, no, I got you. But yeah, like this one, I'm between a 5 and a 6. It's like you said, I can't go below a 5 because I mean I was on the edge of my seat like the first half of the movie. Even like the first 2/3, I was pretty freaking invested. So, probably a light 6 to a strong 5 for me. We'll see. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I am in the same boat as Jake, where it's like the first half of the movie, I was like, wow, this is actually like could be really good. Like I was feeling really good about where it could go. And I just think that it just did not deliver. Like I don't, and I don't feel like, even after like talking about it now, it's just like I don't feel like it did a good job of accomplishing what it set out to do. I feel like the ending was really stupid and sloppy, and I just do like, and I understand like, and I think kind of talking with you more, Edward, like I understand the appeal of getting up on stage and having this moment for the dramatics of it and really making like a point of it, but the way it was done just sucked. And like if I watch this again, like there's no way I would ever sit down and watch this movie again. Not that takes away from the rating, but like I feel like it just, I don't know, it had a lot of potential, and I just don't feel like it kind of came through on it. I'm giving it a 4, which is the lowest I've rated any film on Film Tangents so far.
I respect
I respect it.
I respect
it.
And
sometimes,
I agree, dude. I'm not rewatching this thing. I'm not rewatching this.
Yeah. No, I am rewatching this movie for sure. It's funny that I came out the highest rating for this film, but I think as a collective Film Tangents rating, that's a pretty clear 5.
Yeah.
5 out of 10.
Yeah, and I think it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating because they had the obviously had the budget, obviously had all the resources in the world to make this something it could have been, and I think it easily could have been a 7-8 movie if they just did some things differently.
Yeah. So before we move on, before I tell us the movie of the week, I want to play a quick game with you boys. I just wanted you to tell me if this flavor line, if this flavor text for the film is this film or not this film, and have to tell me yes or no, and I will not move on until you tell me. So this is the flavor text for this film. If you can't find a friend, make one. Yes or no?
No.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on. Let the festivities begin. Yes or no?
No.
No.
Okay, moving on. Beauty is vicious.
Yes.
No.
Okay, moving on. Watch yourself.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that could be a yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like that could be like it could be like a tagline for like Freaky Friday or something. Like it's probably not, but like I'll just say yes.
Okay, so wrong on that one. And then, if you can't find a friend, make one. Also wrong on that one. Let the festivities begin. You guys were right, and that was not it. Beauty is vicious. What did you guys say for beauty is vicious?
I said yes.
I think I said no.
Yes, I know. Jake, you're wrong. Jack, you're right. Not it. And then finally, and this is the right one. If you follow the instructions, what could go wrong?
Did you even give us that option?
No, I just revealed what it actually was.
Yeah, that's a yes. That's the tagline for the movie for sure. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. So for next week, guys, let's watch the movie Challengers by Luca Guadagnino, the tennis film.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. That's next week on Film Tangents, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Signing off.